Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. Murder at Eerie. The extreme ironing convention was infamous in Preston. For the last 8 years, extreme ironers from around the world fell upon the city. Their antics in the streets caused emergency calls for days. Ironing on top of city buses. Ironing while hang gliding over downtown. Ironing while belaying down the cupola of City Hall. Every year, there was one incident that truly left its mark on Preston. This year, the incident would be the death of Sean Morrison. I looked down at Sean's body, his face brutalized by a blunt object. In any other situation, identifying the murder weapon might have been tricky. But not here. Not at Eerie. There was no mistaking the iron-shaped dent in the dead man's head. I had seen it before. I clenched my fists, remembering the day that my wife had been murdered 8 years ago. The image of her face haunted my nightmares. Beautiful until it had been ruined by a Bosch TDA 2650 G-Bide quick fill, the highest rated iron of 2012. Preston's coroner had estimated the time of death at about 2:15 a.m. The murder weapon had not been found yet, and the trail of blood leading out of Sean's hotel suite had run cold quickly. No witnesses had come forward. The extreme ironing community was notoriously tight-knit and likely to protect their own. They had done so in the past. Detective Clay, they're ready. A police officer on scene had separated the suspects, and she handed me a list of names. I squared my shoulders and got started with the interview process. Anna Kruger, the hotel manager, was already in Sean's suite, pacing around and surveying the extensive damage. Pieces of drywall and broken glass littered the carpet, and the telltale burn marks of overly hot irons defaced the furniture and carpet. I watched her until she stopped mid-pace near the end table next to the couch and knelt down. Anna stuck her arm in a hole in the wall and pulled out a Panasonic A66K automatic iron. I never would have allowed these extreme ironing United States assholes to have Eerie here again if I weren't so hard up for money. At least they rented out the entire place. Anna glared at the iron-shaped hole in the drywall. They always ruin something. They leave burns and run up the electric bills, plugging in all their stupid irons. She raised her eyes to meet mine and brandished the iron. But this time, Sean went too far. When was the last time you saw him, Ms. Kruger? He came down last night, around 11. asking for more towels. She pointed at a pile of charred towels near the couch. I can see why he asked. Anna held out the Panasonic iron, her hand shaking. The temperature gauge is on the highest setting. He was burning things on purpose. If he were still alive, I'd sue him into oblivion. Miss Kruger, do check with that ironing board vendor, detective. I had to chase him out of the storage room around 2:30 this morning. Mighty suspicious, if you ask me. Errol Fleming, the owner of the Cleveland Ironing Board Company, leaned against the wall in his room. That damned Sean, he growled, German accent thick on his tongue. He ruined me. He posted negative reviews of my new ironing board design and used his extreme ironing championship fame and influence to boost them. Go on, the Cleveland steamer. It was a board made specifically for steam irons. Sean was a proponent of steam irons, but he said my board had a shitty design. His was the #1 review on Amazon. Everyone saw it. My profits tanked. No one bought. I am glad he is gone. I'm sure his negative reviews were the only reason no one bought the board. Errol's eyes widened, and he straightened his back. I am not happy he is dead. That is a terrible thing to say. I am innocent, of course. Mr. Fleming, can you tell me what you were doing in the storage closet last night? Color rose to his cheeks. I cannot say. It would ruin me. I thought your business was already ruined by Mr. Morrison. Yes, my beautiful Cleveland steamer. But I had other boards in development. What does this have to do with your excursion? Errol sucked in a breath and held it until I thought he might faint. Finally, he breathed out and answered. I was looking at the hotel's ironing boards. I frowned. I couldn't come up with any good ideas, he wailed. I was looking for inspiration. You can't tell anyone that I'm an ironing board design fraud. Errol slumped back against the wall. Gottverdammt, he whispered. Thank you for your time, Mr. Fleming. Please, wait. You should talk to the tall man with curly hair. I saw him sneaking out of Sean's room last night, after 2. Thomas Prince. The tall man with curly hair was Thomas Prince, a longtime advocate for the use of steam irons over dry irons in the extreme ironing competition world. Thomas was a prolific donor to Kickstarter campaigns for new steam iron technology, and he wielded a Rowenta DW52700 1 Focus Excel steam iron during competitions. He looked up from the hotel bed when I walked in, eyes red and puffy. Detective, I hear you were out late. Yeah, I went to see Sean. Any particular reason? We're friends. Thomas frowned and corrected himself. Were friends, Mr. Prince. Your visit makes you the last person to see Sean alive. That doesn't mean anything. Have you talked to Noah yet? He was going to drop some major news on us tonight, and Sean got wind of it yesterday. He was so upset. What news? Sean wanted to take over Eos. He thought Noah was doing a shit job. and he's never been shy about voicing his opinion. Noah threatened him, so Sean took a swing, caught him right in the jaw. Good thing he has a weak punch. Go on, Thomas leaned back. Not much else to say. I went to Sean's room to talk him down after that. He was pretty shaken up and talking about leaving EUs completely. Noah had really gotten him riled up. I appreciate the information. In the meantime, I would like you to stay right here. Thomas shot me an annoyed look. Am I still a suspect? You were seen leaving Sean's room last night, and his body was found this morning. I'd say you're the primary suspect. I called for additional officers to watch Thomas's room, while one officer remained inside. Noah Bowers. I approached the sullen president of Extreme Ironing United States, Noah Bowers, in the hotel's business center. He looked up from his seat at a small conference table. Before I could say anything, Noah spoke. You think I did it, don't you? I didn't say that, but you know I threatened him, right? Well, he threatened me first. I didn't want him to, think I was intimidated. Noah stood up and spun one of the chairs. Look, bro, Sean was a dick, okay? That's no secret. So he wanted to oust me and, take over as president of the EIUS. That doesn't mean I killed him. I said nothing. Noah grunted and crossed his arms. If you really want to know who did it, you should talk to his fiancée, Marin, bro. She was gonna, poison him or something. Marin knocked. I visited Marin in her hotel room. She was sitting calmly on the hotel bed, watching a reality show, and she didn't bother to look up as I entered the room. I understand you found Sean this morning, Ms. Knox. Sure did. I went in to make sure he was up in time for the convention. He liked to sleep in. You had access to his room? She stared at me. Duh. We were engaged. You don't seem upset that your fiancé was murdered. Marin shrugged. I'm not. He was an abusive, cheating piece of shit. And I was going to end things tonight. But now I have to thank someone for saving me the trouble. I understand you were planning to poison Sean. Marin cocked a thin brow. Why would I poison him when I could leave him? That's why I got my own room in the first place. I was thinking of putting eye drops in his food so he'd shit his guts out. So yeah, maybe that's technically poisoning him, but he wouldn't have died or anything. It's still an actionable offense, Ms. Knox. Whatever. Like I said, I didn't do it. She paused and thought. You should talk to Eddie. I saw him arguing with Sean yesterday. It looked pretty heated, but I didn't stick around to listen. Probably something to do with steam versus dry irons again. Eddie's crazy for dry irons. Eddie Wu was doodling on hotel stationery, but he put the pen down as I walked into his room. I understand you and Mr. Morrison exchanged words yesterday. We have the same argument every time we see each other, Eddie said, sitting up a little straighter. He's always going on about steam iron superiority, but he fails to see the beauty and simplicity of a classic dry iron. When did you last see Mr. Morrison? Eddie continued, as though I hadn't spoken. Using a dry iron is an art form. He walked across the room towards an ornate case. Let me show you. That's okay, my iron, he cried out in panic. Eddie showed me the empty case. Where is it? How? Eddie sank to his knees, tears spilling from his eyes. My glorious iron. I can't believe it's gone. Mr. Wu, I don't care about your needs, detective. What about mine? My iron is missing. The perfect sole plate, unblemished by steam holes, polished to a high shine. Did you know I had a custom handle built to fit my hand perfectly? My heart skipped a beat, and an image of my wife thrust itself into my head. The iron mark on her face wasn't perfectly smooth. There were spots, steam holes, but Sean's mark had no holes. He was killed with a dry iron. Mr. Wu? I said, struggling to keep my voice even. Who else here is a dry iron aficionado? You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me. Eddie grinned like the Cheshire Cat. Sean Morrison. Did anyone else know? Eddie shrugged. This is a small world, detective. It's hard to hide something so scandalous. His grin faded. You should talk to Thomas. Thomas Prince. Thomas jerked up in surprise as I walked in the door. He set aside the iron he was cradling and wiped a tear from his eye. Mr. Prince, how well do you know the others at this convention? Well, me and Sean go way back, of course. Eddie's been around for a while. We don't agree on irons, but he's a nice guy. Marin came into the mix a couple years ago. Noah's been the president of EIUS for a long time, but he mostly keeps to himself. I don't know him that well. Do you know if anyone might have a motive to harm Mr. Morrison? Marin and Sean have been together for a long time, but that's been falling apart. Thomas made a face. She's a real piece of work. I wouldn't trust her with my iron under any circumstances, but I don't really know the others well enough to say. I took a deep breath. Did you know that Sean was secretly into dry irons? Thomas winced. I went to visit him after he argued with Noah. He was really stressed out. I don't think he meant to tell me, but he slipped up. He told me about his preference for dry irons. Go on. I was shocked, you know. We had spent years talking about the merits of steam irons over dry. Thomas threw his hands in the air. I mean, you can use a steam iron as a dry iron. But he just kept talking about how cool Eddie's iron was. Thomas stood and walked to the window. I asked him if I could have his championship-winning steam iron. And I know it was kind of selfish to even ask, but it's a steam iron. He faced me, his mouth hard. If he was so into dry irons, there's no reason he needed to keep that one. I knew the answer already. He said no. Thomas hung his head. Yeah, that's when I noticed it. A plug barely poked out from under the hotel's dresser. Thomas, noted my pause and followed my gaze. We lunged at the same time, but I reached the dresser first, knelt, and yanked the cord, and there it was. The Oster Heavyweight GCSTD 1109 Classic, stained with what was surely the victim's blood. Eddie Wu's missing iron. I expected to fight my way out of the situation, but Thomas sat down heavily and exhaled. I didn't mean to kill him. I backed away from Thomas to the room door. Sean had Eddie's iron in his room. He was messing with it. I think he was trying to break it so Eddie wouldn't win in today's competition. Thomas groaned. And that was bad enough. If the sponsors found out, he'd lose all those investments. But when he refused to give me his steam iron, I just snapped. I stuck my head out the door and motioned for the nearest officer to assist me. Before I could even think about what I was doing, Sean was on the floor, and I was holding Eddie's iron. I brought it back here to hide it, but you see how much good that did me. Thomas looked down at his hands. I'll never iron again. The officer casually entered the room. I won't resist, he said, looking straight at me. I messed up. Mr. Prince, please remain still, the officer said gently as she bent down and handcuffed Thomas's hands behind his back. The officer led Thomas away, but the satisfaction of solving the case rang hollow in my heart. I returned to other suspects to tell them they were free to go. When I got to Marin's room, she simply nodded and started packing her things. But there was something I had to know. Did you know your boyfriend was a dry iron promoter? Marin's eyes widened. Sean's been advocating the benefits of steam irons, both in competition and in the home, for years. The slight tremble in her voice gave her away. She was hiding something. What aren't you telling me, Ms. Knox? She stared at the floor and bit her lip. Look, we'd always use a steam iron for shows and competitions because that's what people expected. He had a sponsor to please, a wealthy one, but behind closed doors, Marin took a deep, shuddering breath. Behind closed doors, we used a dry iron. She buried her face in her hands. Oh God, you can't tell anyone. His reputation would be destroyed. The sponsor would pull all their funding out of the projects he and Thomas were working on. Like what? They had an idea to improve this older model steam iron, right? To make it more efficient and easier to clean. The steam holes on that model were tough to clean, but it was otherwise a great iron. I would even use it sometimes when he wasn't at home. I liked it better than his dry iron. She laughed sadly. He would have been so mad. Marin stood up and started to pace. Anyway, he never got a new steam iron, so he always used the same one. His championship iron. It was iconic, blue and white. Have you ever seen it? Something in her voice made me uneasy. Let me show you, Marin continued. It's beautiful, Xavier. How do you know my name? She opened a decorative case near the foot of the hotel bed and pulled out an iron. My blood ran cold. It was a Bosch TDA 2650 G quick fill. Marin smirked at my expression. You recognize it, don't you? Or rather, you recognize the shape of the sole plate. It was the same one that killed your wife 8 years ago. She stepped closer, her grin widening. He did it, you know? Sean killed her. She found out his secret obsession with dry irons, and he couldn't allow her to talk. I inched my hand towards my concealed pistol. Put the Bosch down, Marin. You don't have to do this. Marin raised the iron. Her pupils dilated with madness. But I've always wanted to know what it felt like, what it could feel like to kill someone. She swung the iron towards my head, barely missing. I called for backup and pulled out my pistol to defend myself. I don't want to shoot you. 2 police officers swept into the room before I had to take any further actions. Marin was quickly disarmed and handcuffed. She glared at me as the officers pulled her from the room, but she said nothing further. My heart ached with memories of my wife. Whether he knew it or not, Thomas had given her a little bit of justice, but that didn't excuse his actions. He would be behind bars for a long time. Marin would serve time for being an accessory to murder, for covering up Sean's crimes. I would have preferred to see Sean stand trial, to look into his face with satisfaction as the bailiffs hauled him away. I would have to content myself knowing the truth of my wife's murder had finally been ironed out. Book of Hours. Manuscripts are from the devil, I'd been told, but I felt it too. Evil emanating out like heat from a fire. I wrapped it in cloth to be safe, tucked it in my satchel, and now I wait. I had a few hours, enough time, I'm sure, before my master discovered my absence and my theft. I drank my beer down to forget the past, to focus on my future, my hope brightening the walls of the dark public house. My eyes followed Evelyn as she moved around me, cleaning up from the night before. Her dark hair pulled back tight showed her pale beauty, and even the dull woolen uniform couldn't diminish her lithe figure. I lifted my head in an attempt to catch her eye, but no, that candle had guttered out, only the smoke of my longing left. When she first came to town, she spoke to me, asked about my work and my master, but her attention had drifted when I said no. Now I was no more than another chair in her way, an obstacle to sweep around. I did this for you, Evelyn, and you won't even look at me? On my own, I see. So be it. Pulling out the cloth-wrapped bundle from my satchel, I carefully placed it on the table. If what Evelyn said was true, this strange item could allow me to finally escape my service, with enough gold to make a new life, free from my bonds. I stared at it, hesitant to touch the elaborate box. Just parchment squeezed tight between wooden boards. How could it hurt me? I had seen it before on my master's shelf, next to an old statue, but gave it no more thought than the worn boots below it. I have no need of such things as paper or written symbols. My only use is for work. Evelyn said a man, demon, had come from Rome searching for these old manuscripts, such as one rumored to be held by my own master. no larger than my two hands together, this small item could be my salvation. The cover creaked open, dust puffed into the air, as if breathing again after ages of suffocation. First one page, then the next blank. My heart leapt into my throat. Could some magic be needed to make the words appear? But then, on the third sheet, an image appeared. A man so bright and real. I touched the page to see if he lived. I understood why Demon wanted this, needed it enough to pay gold for it. The man, his hands raised with blood on his palms, a cut in his ribs, stared at me. A gold circle around his head, a gold cloak over his body. Was this the man whose soul had been caught? Half the page and the next were filled with black marks in dense flowing lines. They seemed to move as I looked over them, as if these lines were fighting to be released from the page. A black dread flowed down my back. Have I released some demon by opening his cage? My blunt and scarred fingers moved along each, following these strange markings. A hand on my shoulder. You did it. I turned to see Evelyn behind me. I hoped you wouldn't. What? My confusion intensified when she looked down into my eyes, deep pools of sadness. If this goes well, I'll have gold. My lips quivered, matching the tremor of my heart. We can leave together. Poor boy. Her hand touched my face. The blaze in her eyes lit a fire in me, illuminating a future better than I could dream. I wish it could be so. Her eyes closed. Yes, if after, meet me outside. I grabbed her hand, kissed her fingers. We'll leave this town together and live free. Evelyn bent down. Her lips met mine, just an instant. A warm touch, an eternity of bliss, sparking lighting through to my toes. Then she looked up at a sound and stepped away. The door stuttered open, and a man spilled in with the morning light. I felt Demon before I could see his face, a cold frost flowing into the room. A narrow stick of a man. His overlarge head bobbed on a narrow neck, hair fine, matted to his temples, with a few strips reaching down his jaw. He clutched his cloak to his chest with thin arms, like crooked branches. Glasses perched at the end of his long, pointed nose, a sparrow hanging on for dear life. He moved without effort, as if he floated instead of walked. Demon nodded to Evelyn, waved toward her with two fingers. Dark, cold spots of light peered out under heavy brows. Eyes like a wild beast with no soul, and I feared him like no other man I had ever met. He smelled of mold and dust, an odor of death that sent the hair on my neck lurching from my body to escape. Long, thin fingers danced on the table, blackened nails clicking against the wood. I had heard of these scribes, men who trapped words on a page with strange magic and a feather. What mysticism did they practice? What knowledge did they deal in beyond my ken? I eyed him warily. That knowledge stuffed too tight, a too full sack could explode, destroying him and anyone around him. Do you have the gold? I whispered, keeping my head low. A cough, dry and hoarse, escaped his lips, like a death rattle. I feared for his health, but at his crooked grin, I recognized it as his laugh. Evelyn brought 2 ceramic cups of black beer, along with a metal platter laden with apples, dried meat, and cheeses. Demon's hand brushed her leg, up to her hip, lingering. I didn't understand how she could stand the touch, but her body stayed still, though her eyes looked away. See, I have the monette. Demon's face fell into a sneer. His words had a strange foreign lilt that grated on my ears. A cloth bag landed with a heavy clink on the table, the sound of my future. Evelyn had spoken the truth. I suddenly saw our life together, our horses in the green pasture, prancing in front of golden fields of wheat. Evelyn stood at my side, holding a draught of beer for me and my pipe. Our young children laughing around us. I tried to count their little heads. Were there 8 or 10? You have il manoscrito? Demon interrupted. I looked around the empty room before I placed the bundle on the table. I felt lighter having passed it on. His hands paused in midair when the cloth fell away. The old man breathed in, his eyes bright, his back straightening up. His mouth dropped open in pure desire. Demon moved to open the cover. I grabbed his wrist, felt his bones in my hand, his skin cold as ice. Alive, though, his pulse beat thin and fast. Be careful. The man, he's awake. Questo è il mio lavoro. Demon spoke, low and dry as a desert wind. This is my life's work. I knew enough to know that these lines signified words somehow. The man in gold's voice trapped on this parchment. I sunk down further in my chair, weighed down by the pain of slavery. I knew what it meant to be under lock and key, allowed to be free only on the whim of my master. Demon meant to keep these words locked away, to add to his collection of souls. Better them than me. Mio Dio il Horai, he said, the book of hours. The rumors spoke true. We thought lost. Is it what you're looking for? I focused on reading Demon's blank face. He didn't answer, but continued to lift page after page, each turn showing the same, more and more black snakes squirming under my eyes. I had no idea what thoughts these little lines captured, but I didn't want to understand. I felt the beer roil in my stomach, threatening to come back up. The man of gold had been trapped onto these papers, imprisoned forever, with this foreigner to be the jailer. Pay me or I'll burn the vile thing. Demon's knife flashed, a blur of steel, and then a sharp line of heat at my neck. Demon held me, with death at my throat. I'll take this as a gift. Or will you trade with your blood? A swipe of his wrist, and I would leave this life, damned to hell for eternity. I should have read the signs. They were as clear as day. The offer too good to be true. I'd been betrayed. Slam! The door flew open and my master stood in the door, his stance unmistakable, his rage shaking him and the sword dancing in his hand. Boy! My master shouted. How could you betray me? Steal from me! The blade lowered, pointing an accusation at me. Cos'è questo? Demon shouted to my master. I didn't know he stole. He will be punished. I thought of Evelyn, our life together. I couldn't go out like this. Please, no, help me. Suddenly, the manuscript moved, falling to the floor, catching Demon's attention, loosening his grip. I'll never know if it was a quirk of fate, or if the man in gold chose to help me, but I took the chance and grabbed the knife by the blade to pull it from my neck. I escaped his grasp, though my palms were sliced to shreds. I turned to see Eve wielding the platter like a hammer, swinging again and again at Demon. With Evelyn at my side, I could make an escape. Scooping up the manuscript, I grabbed an iron poker from the fire and ran at my master, standing in front of the only portal to my future. I had lived more of life in these few short hours than in all of my 20 years. I kissed a girl, escaped death, and now carry a priceless treasure in my hand. The stars were aligned with me today. I could not lose. Anger at all the scars, all the pain this man caused powered my arm. I swung my war axe for a killing blow to his head. My master took a simple step, dodged my weapon, and I felt his blade in my side. "I'm invincible!" I screamed as I fell out the front door, the manuscript tumbling from my hand. "If only I could find my love, Evelyn, then we can meet our future together." I looked at my hands, covered in blood, my life pouring out of my side. As I fell, a flash of recognition. The man in gold. I opened my eyes to see Evelyn above me, her face more beautiful than anything I deserve. "Is this heaven?" "No, not yet," she said. "Soon enough." She picked up the manuscript from the ground. "That," I gestured to it. "The man in gold, he needs to be set free," I said, out of breath. "That devil will take him." Men are the devil. I learned that where I was raised in the monastery, as a servant, and then her jaw clenched. A brother taught me my letters. Now I work for Demon. My world is small and hard. But when I open this, read these words, I release the spirit, and I escape this life, even if only for a few moments. Do you believe? He saved me. I closed my eyes. I saw the horses in the green pasture, golden fields of wheat. The man in gold stood with me as Evelyn read to us, her words flowing on a breeze. I am finally free. When the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and rescues them from all their troubles. Psst, Jill killed Jack. I very much need some socks, pretty please, with sugar on top. This was the text that I sent to my estranged ex-wife, the one who wanted to drag me out to the wilderness under the guise of talking about financing our first child's entrance into college. I knew that she was old-fashioned and wanted to push me from a hill, just like Fellini. So my last request was not very sinister. I mean, even death row inmates should get some free laundry or a meal, maybe even a prayer. I looked into the pantry of my rental and decided there was no good food. Bachelor food is disgusting when you leave it in the fridge for a week. I needed my dog. Hey, can we bring the dog? I knew that Caspian hated hiking just as much as me. It was like walking without purpose, like smelling flowers just to get allergies. I also knew that if Michelle threw me over a cliff and I was able to not immediately die, then Caspian the burner could theoretically pull me up with a rope. I decided to wear my flax Bermuda-styled shorts, which can be unwoven and turned into rope or a joint. She did not immediately text back and scold me for overpacking. This was a good sign because I had previously said I would find some kind of therapy. She wanted a stranger to break my will, make me cry, pay for the breaking, and send me back all trained. Also, I had a very large life insurance policy at the time. Husband therapy is kind of like dog training, but the wife forgets that she has to remember the commands, or the husband will forget, and the 2 weeks and $1,500 in Idaho won't take. She has to reinforce the electric shock therapy, the way the husband therapist swings a hand like windshield wipers and asks if my mother ever touched me inappropriately. It was just 38 minutes before the murder. Hike. In Knights of Calabria, Fellini taught us that a kind whore will get many marriage proposals, walk up to the mountain of love with all her savings, and get thrown over the mountain by her fake fiancé. I decided to pack like Fellini. I went up to my rented room and looked for all the things that could be lugged in a hefty garbage bag suitcase. There was the square bottle with a ship that my grandfather had constructed with tweezers. Nah, he's dead. There were piles of clothes on the ground. These kept me from bringing a drunk woman home. No one wants to make love next to dirty laundry. That's pretty gross if they do. I saw pictures of my kids when they were young and realized they were getting old, going to college, all taking medications to avoid giving me grandkids. I looked at the pillows. They were stiff, so I used them only to prop up a cell phone to watch Italian movies. It was better to pillow on a wad of sweaters and save the neck. I went into the closet and found my mafia money. It was just an envelope from the bank full of cash because I hate wasteful tipping. For some reason, the kids at the register have a very difficult time begging for tips of cash when they only punched in buttons. They do not have this problems with cards because they say, "Please follow the instructions on the screen," when they ask for 30%, 40. One of the cashiers actually said my card was declined because he hit the 50% tip option for me. I use cash so the kids can beg like adults. There is no need for great cash when your former estranged spouse wants to go hiking in the wilderness. Also, I think she's bitter because of the dating. She pretends she doesn't mind that much, but always gets me drunk and asks for details. I don't know what I tell her half the time. I see a bottle of Canadian Mist, whiskey, that was purchased for toothaches and bladder infections. It is not a very good bottle of whiskey, but it is lightweight since half of it is missing. It is best to be slightly inebriated before being thrown off a cliff. Also, the fall hurts less. I packed the whiskey. Now my closet is executive clean. I have 10 handkerchiefs laid out in case one of the kids gets married. Handkerchiefs are the required minimum for a gentleman of the ages. You can offer the spare to a woman in tears. You can use the linen to avoid touching bathroom knobs. It makes a wonderful mask in the case of desperate last-minute need for larceny. I love handkerchiefs. I packed 10 in the garbage bag, knowing that large puncture wounds should be full of gauze. For this reason, I had to return the silk hankies. It is better for the absorbent cotton in case of a fall. What else? It was a tiny room with windows facing the main road in town. The firemen and police went up and down the road trying to find an entrance to Starbucks. They put in a one-way driveway to be tricky. I had some bills on my desk, but I didn't want to bring these to the afterlife. I decided to quickly pay for my parking bill because I didn't want my extra truck to get towed if I should be in the community hospital for very long. I said a small, "Thank you, God," because 2 of our 3 nurses had wanted to date, but you should never date medical people in a small town. Amputations happen when you are not a gentleman. What else? Sheets? Number comforter for comfort? Number Michelle had felt bad that I was cold without her cuddles and bought a comforter matching certain parts of her body. Peach. It was definitely a distraction if ever a gentleman has lady company. A man should have his bed colored in very serious colors, perhaps gray and black, and I needed a multi-tool. A multi-tool is the American version of a Swiss Army knife. It is neither a knife nor from the Swiss. Our multi-tools should be from Leatherman because they have pliers and blades, which do not fold back on fingers. They have finger locks. Unfortunately, I had the Lowe's knockoff multi-tool, which had already severed half of a finger. A nurse, who I did not date, stitched it back on with some weird thread that was supposed to dissolve. She kept sticking that fishhook needle and whispering, "Does it hurt? Does that hurt? What if I do this?" I didn't go back to remove the stitches, which didn't shrink or get dissolved. The nerve was actually clipped by the fake multi-tool, and I can feel the rain coming 5 days before the weatherman now. I put the multi-tool in the garbage bag with the whiskey and the handkerchiefs. 22 minutes. Now, in the smallest case that Michelle actually wanted to talk about paying for our kids' college and not throw me over the cliff, I was prepared to bring a checkbook. I would argue that the check should be endorsed to the child herself. Michelle would argue that kids might spend all the money drinking and whoring like their father. I resented that comment because our town didn't actually have any real prostitutes, in order to avoid the impasse of how the child will spend the money. For education, Michelle would push me over the cliff, wait 6 weeks, and get my life insurance. She didn't like long and sustained arguments because she was taking yoga. I decided to bring my checkbook and not transfer any money into the account. What would they say? We're sorry. He has the money in a money market, but we cannot legally transfer this money to you. Is he around? Then she would feel really silly about kicking the goose over the glade. It is important for husbands and fathers to always be useful. Do not teach them how to start a BBQ grill. They will inevitably become vegans and hire a gardener. They will keep the seat down and the toothpaste caps fully engaged. The planned obsolescence of a man starts with money. Try to get your spouse fired. In my case, this was not possible. She worked for the state. So after so many decades, the man is not necessary. He must be thrown from the hill under the guise of good health. His dog may or may not follow, depending if the man fed the dog in the last few months. Dogs are ultimately loyal to the person who puts kibble in the bowl. It is nothing personal. 16 minutes to death. The waning sun reminded me, you could throw her down the hill. Wow, I never considered murder for life, insurance, or love. I never considered her last words. Would she fall down the hill and say, I was just a kid, ding? Wow, this was huge. It didn't seem very noble to throw a former wife down a hill. I don't know what was going on with Jack and Jill, but I bet it wasn't his idea to get any water. Notice that Jack broke his crown, head, long before Jill slipped on the murder weapon. Moral: do not go up hills for water. Water likes to be lower due to gravity. I knew that a former spouse did not really care about my good health, never dying due to exercise, but I also felt she would bring me some socks out of duty. She is prideful like that. She wants her man to die with clean socks, because a coroner will look for the meaning of death and should not be confused by bad odors, nor have to cut the socks off the body. They get stiff with grime. Also, 11 minutes. I really wanted to get some veneers before death. It seems really creepy to have a perfect white smile in death, but hide the blemishes with a beard in life. The coffee struggle had taken its toll. I have never heard of anyone suing Starbucks for their loss of white. How would you even quantify the loss? You Honor, I was going to get a new hot wife, but I couldn't smile due to Starbucks stains. How much did that cost you, Mr. Go-Round? The lady from San Jose had stock options of Oracle. She's probably a billionaire. I lost this opportunity because of Starbucks stains. I would never smile. Can you show me your receipts? No, Honor. I paid in cash to avoid needless tipping. How do we know you didn't stain your teeth from Pete's coffee? Pete's roast gives me heartburn. Can you prove this heartburn? Ouch. It was going to be just like the cigarette debacle. If you smoke one Marlboro in your life, you cannot blame Camels for your cancer. Tobacco manufacturers know this and promote community smoking to destroy the single source theory. 7 minutes. In my last 7 minutes of life, before Michelle brought the dog in the Prius, before the socks were delivered, and she had a large aluminum canister of water filled with melatonin to knock me out at the summit. She knows I get sleepy near the summit. Contrary to popular notions, St. Bernards and their cousin dog, the Bernese mountain dog, do not actually have smelling salts in their saliva glands. They cannot lick you to consciousness. They usually have less than a tankard of whiskey around their neck, because the whiskey is meant to fortify the dog in bad weather. Some share, that is true. But mostly the large dog will watch you falling into snoring, as the Michelle commands that he uses his large head to push his former master over the hill. The dog will think it is just a game since his eyes are poor on telescopic visions. He cannot tell if the cliff is a few feet or a few leagues. He will actually get excited to be playing a lazy game where he doesn't have to fetch and get sweaty. My poor dumb dog will be an accomplice to murder. No, if not for my own sake, I must think of California law, how they will eventually kill Caspian because he was a man killer. The law does not care if it was his idea or the woman. He will be taken to the Black Ops section of the SPCA and ethically sent to heaven. They are very moral about these things, and overcrowding is at an all-time high. Please remember to spray and neuter your pet to avoid euthanasia. My body? I need something reflective for the Air Force. She will probably bring me to Fort Ord to hike. They are an inactive Army base. This is why we need the Air Force to gather my remains. 1 minute. What the hell can they see from outer space? I decided to wrap myself in mylar. I would go out looking like a Chinese spy balloon. Someone would find this story and know. It wasn't the dog's fault after all. I will try to come back to edit this. She just arrived with a Prius. The dog looks hungry. The horseman. The man on the horse was an odd one. I could tell that even as he angled his quarter horse into my beams like it was his turn in the center ring. An Easterner, which maybe 10 years earlier might have seemed even odder. Little dressier than the average rancher, handled his animal like he knew how, but had learned it someplace else. Saw you from the rise, the man said. Easterner, all right. Kind of horse-faced fellow with a government haircut and a big nose that reminded me of the Jew families that had passed through the dust and winds in Pop's tourist camp on their way to California. Not that I gave a damn. Pop hadn't given a shit about God after he took Ma in 32, and so he likewise didn't give two shits about anybody's private dealings with the Lord with or without Jesus. No, it was the man's eyes. Big, calm, curious. Do you need some assistance? My old Nash 400 was running like a top on 4 threadbare but plump tires, and the trunk was flung open with the jack still clamped into place. And then there was the Indian blanket I'd got in trade for some janitor work at the last gas before the next last gas on the way to my pot of gold that had turned into a cesspool about 2 hours ago. Oh, and the shovel lying next to the blanket rolled tight like a Tulsa oilman's stogie on the dirt under the lip of the trunk. Even without Jesus putting his 2 cents in, it wasn't the way I'd been raised. But like I said, it was the eyes, unblinking even in my headlamps. And that slow smile he gave me as I pulled Pop's old Colt out of my belt and made him a third eye, like I'd done him the biggest favor in the world. I'd settled in Espanola a couple years after the Depression ended, though, or maybe cause I'd helped the town undertaker put a number of such folks under the shifting Oklahoma topsoil for a few pennies a body. I'd sought out someplace a little more off the path of men, desperate or stupidly hopeful enough to drag their wives and young ones through the valley of death to a pot of gold that didn't exist. But everything shrinks as we grow, my pop once said, and it wasn't too long until they started to trickle south off the California Trail into the desert. College types, engineers, they said, Easterners, Jews, I heard, and more than a few foreigners who weren't fooling anybody with names like Henry Farmer and Nicholas Baker. Now, I'd never been out of Oklahoma before Pop's lungs finally gave out, and I dug one last grave this time for free, and I'd sure as shootin' never met any Germans. As at the time we had an axe to grind with Mr. Hitler, I was a sight more than nervous about the funny voices with the funny names sidling up beside me at the local watering hole on a Saturday night. Didn't help that the government had bought out the ranch school and put me out of the first steady work I'd had since sorting the dead from Pop's barely paying guests. The school, and its high-flown Eastern teachers and rich folks' kids playing cowboy seemed a bit silly to me. But groundskeeper's pay was decent, and the Ponces treated me right. Felt no desire to stick around afterwards, even with the new jobs the government and their engineers were bringing to the area. What the Easterners and foreigners specifically were doing may have been the best-kept secret in the Southwest, but the tighter you keep the lid on the pot, the bigger the mess when things boil over. All anybody could guess was it had to something to do with that aforementioned scrap with Der Fuhrer, but folks got rattled with the army and the federal suits, cleverly watching every move the locals made. Bad enough, they were keeping Nazi prisoners and Japanese folks from California on ice down south at Fort Stanton. Seemed passing strange we weren't rounding up Germans and Italians who could blend right in at any military base or shipyard, but my 2 cents wasn't going to buy me anything but trouble, especially these days. The Denver and Rio Grande Western had ripped out the Chile line and pulled the tracks from Espanola in '42, but the town was hanging on between the nearby farms and the new government jobs 10 miles to the west. I was a handy sort with nowhere really to go, so I hung on too, in what passed for the middle of nowhere. If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. I think that's in the Old Testament, or maybe some tourist dropped that pearl on me on their way to the new promised land. As I now headed the opposite direction, back through Espanola and north past Taos into the mountains near the Colorado border, I could feel God's jeering presence. Poor time to get religion, with 2 bodies stuffed in the trunk and a ticket to hell waiting at the station for me. When I think about it, and believe you me, I have, maybe that's precisely the time. I put them deep in the Carson forest. It was a skill I thought I'd put behind me. But even the dead can surprise you. I was in my bed a few hours before dawn, contemplating and shivering on the bare mattress. It was sheep country. I could get a new blanket in the morning, though at this moment I wasn't sure of the need. Barring rattlers, the horse was the only one got off free that night. Hitler willingly gave up his ghost in the spring of '45, and his pal Mussolini got a date with a firing squad and a public showing strung up like the day's catch outside a Milan filling station. It took close to 3 more years to rein in Hirohito. After destroying the Japanese Navy and taking a string of Pacific islands, hemming the empire in nice and neat, we rained fire down on Tokyo, Osaka, Hiroshima, and Fukuyama. I say we, although I spent most of my stint with the 124th Transportation Battalion in Luzon, up to my elbows in axle grease and sweat. I'd signed up 2 months after that night in the forest, reasoning only more blood would wash away what was on my hands and my soul. I was pretty much nobody in the middle of nowhere, and when no GIs or Eastern-looking fellows in suits and badges showed up on what passed for my doorsteps, I figured Uncle Sam had chalked things up to Nazi spies, or an unlucky turn on a dark plateau trail, or maybe Junior, as I'd come to call him, just bugging out. It was those goddamned eyes. He seemed like a man looking for a back door out of purgatory. Wonder if the sergeant at the Santa Fe recruiting office spotted anything like that in my bloodshot brown eyes. See, thing with being nobody, having nobody in the middle of nowhere is the company you're forced to keep. Nobody was ever likely to find the bodies, and nobody was likely ever going to spill a tear over the man who'd soiled my good blanket. But every time I listened to the bodies piling up on the radio, I wondered how many others I'd buried. Just what was it that midnight horseman had been up to at the old ranch school, with his army of eggheads with phony names and their army keeping the whole town under wraps? And why did most of the lot just pull up stakes a few weeks after? Had to be some kind of secret weapon, blow the Krauts and the Japs off the map, my guess. For one bleary moment, I thought my brain had contracted TB and an Irish brogue, but it was one of the Denver and Rio Grande Western's Gandy dancers who'd lost a knee and his toes and the works in between to a 3 p.m. coal car maybe 15 years ago. It hadn't broke him of the whiskey. He read too many of those cheap detective magazines with the gumshoes and masked crusaders and flying saucers and half-naked women about to be sawed up, or worse, and I'd had my wits about me. I'd have heard him creaking down the planks and cleared my stool. "And what makes you think that?" I asked, 'cause it was the noise I needed. "My sister's boy. He does some plumbing and odd jobs for them mad scientists down the road." The old man wheezed. "Seems like everybody's in an uproar over the boss fella gone missing a few weeks back. Seem to think there's spies all about, Nazis or commies or some such. Young Danny happened down the wrong hall, and the soldier boys there grilled him near to medium well." "Boss?" My voice went up a couple notches, but he was too stewed to notice. "Some Jew scientist from California supposed to be grand muck-a-muck of the whole operation. Jingleheimer, Weisenheimer, something like that. Some of the talk is, this Jew might be the spy." He leaned in on the half-leg and grabbed my sleeve as a thick cloud of coffin varnish sent me reeling back. "Now, you think about it, boyo. Why you think every man-jack's knickers are in such a knot, lest something big was in the works? You ever hear of atoms? You know, the stuff what we're all of us made of? Well, I hear tell Hitler and his boys have found a way to split them atoms, to just rip all of creation apart. Unless we get there first and blow the fella to hell first. Little wonder them Nazis would want to rub out Dr. Jingleheimer." He then toppled from his stool. I caught him halfway to the floor, jostled him back into place, and made for the door. Crisp desert night outside, the moon too close and stars scattered across the black, nothing like atoms torn asunder. I jumped in the Nash, somehow made it alive back to my shack, and packed for my penance. Recently leaked revelations allege the U.S. Defense and State Departments largely falsified published reports that Nazi Germany and Russia were on the verge of harnessing atomic fission as a potential weapon against America and its European allies, purportedly to spur Allied physicists to escalate development of such an atomic bomb to bring about a speedier surrender by Hitler's forces. That effort, referred to as the Manhattan Project, was conducted under a nearly impenetrable cloak of military security on the site of a former boys' academy near Los Alamos, under the auspices of preeminent theoretical physician J. Robert Oppenheimer. Without revealing the nature of his work, Oppenheimer's mysterious disappearance late one night in 1944 sparked a massive manhunt, and rumors the eccentric scientist had collaborated either with the Germans or the Russians, given his wife and brother's ties to the American Communist Party. The case remains open to this day, and the Manhattan Project ended shortly after Adolf Hitler's suicide and the effective fall of his Nazi regime. Amid the loss of one of its most brilliant minds and fears of further security breaches, the remaining physicists of Los Alamos declared the project a failure. Or so we thought. I talked this week with Isidore Isaac Rabi and David L. Hill, former Manhattan Project researcher. In a 60 Minutes exclusive, Rabi and Hill reveal for the first time that they and other project scientists concerned about the long-range implications of atomic warfare conspired to conceal their findings from the military. Rabi, Dr. Oppenheimer himself voiced doubts about the sanity of releasing such a force into the world, but he was under intense pressure to beat Hitler, beat Stalin to the punch. None of us knew we alone held the keys to a Pandora's box, but without Robert's zeal, we reached a hard but crucial decision. There are questions which illuminate, and there are those that destroy. I was always taught to ask the first kind. The only answer to the question of the day was destruction. If not merely the instantaneous vaporization of entire cities and the then unquantified after effects of ambient radiation, then the geopolitical stranglehold and atomic arms race between the US, Russia, perhaps even the former People's Republic of China would impose upon the human race. And imagine if such a weapon were deployed. There would be no defense, no deterrence, only annihilation. Rabi was awarded the 1944 Nobel Prize for his discovery of nuclear magnetic resonance, a major breakthrough in medical imaging and diagnosis, and his work in microwave technology revolutionized military and commercial radar systems and led to the introduction of the home microwave oven in the mid-1950s. Meanwhile, following the dissolution of the Manhattan Project, project team member David Hill headed up the Federation of American Scientists, later to become the Global Federation of Responsible Scientists, with the overthrow of Joseph Stalin and subsequent collapse of communism across Russia, Eastern Europe, and Northern China. Under Hill's leadership, the Federation worked with the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission and other international agencies to design virtually fail-safe atomic reactors, which have all but replaced coal-fired power facilities and have been credited with greatly reducing air pollution around the planet. We reached Dr. Hill at his Santa Fe home. Hill continues to defend Oppenheimer's patriotism and loyalty, as he has since President Truman branded the missing physicist a traitor in league with communist factions. Hill. The consensus was that the specter of atomic warfare and destruction would come to eclipse any prospect of science in the public interest. We've harnessed the power of the atom to save lives and provide clean, safe energy. I posit we'd never have put men and women on Mars, nor developed a seamless worldwide web of satellite communications and technology had we created a world occupied solely with averting global apocalypse. Wallace. Not everyone concurs with your assessment. Retired Major General Boris Posh, who headed up the investigation into Oppenheimer's disappearance in 1944, argues you and your colleagues withheld vital scientific information that might have ended the war 4 to 5 years earlier, saving, in his words, countless American and civilian Japanese lives. And to this day, Posh believes Oppenheimer was complicit either in your deception or acts of espionage. He's pushing the Justice Department to bring formal charges against what he called the Manhattan conspirators. Your response? Hill. Mr. Wallace, I'd invite you to imagine a football stadium filled to the rafters with all those American, British, Australian, Russian, Japanese casualties. Then imagine dropping a bomb that would wipe out an area 5, 10, 100 miles around that stadium. Then look ahead at the radioactive wastes that would linger in the air above that area for months, possibly years, that might carry across hundreds, possibly thousands of miles. Multiply that by as many bombs as it might take to prove we mean business. As for Dr. Oppenheimer, you have to understand the exhaustion and stress we were all under. Robert's way of dealing with that pressure, his doubts about the work and its consequences, was to ride the mountain trails around Los Alamos, through the Sangre de Cristo, and the Jemez mountain ranges. He loved New Mexico, and he loved his horses. We were on the verge of a key breakthrough at that point, and he vanished shortly after supper. Most of us knew where he'd probably gone, and when they found his horse wandering around the plateau about 3 miles off, we figured he'd met up with some kind of misadventure. Dr. Oppenheimer would never have let that animal to languish in the wilds. That was something General Groves and his men would never understand. It was a small item on the Sunday news feed, but the Tao's byline had caught my eye. A massive flash flood had uncovered, and a trio of hikers had discovered what looked to be the skeletal remains of 2 adult males, one wrapped in the shreds of a decomposed wool blanket. A couple ribs shattered by one bullet, another bullet found rattling around in his companion's punctured skull. They'll surprise you, all right. And with them, the rest comes surging back. The soldiers, the flyers, the privates and colonels and generals, the moms and dads and sons and daughters caught in the Spitfire, the moms and dads and sons and daughters snared in limbo, merely for being the face of the enemy, or a fair enough approximation. The odd horseman with the tortured eyes who'd suffered such indignity and injustice for taking a midnight ride. I'd taken a single souvenir that night in the forest, secreted it away to the Pacific on the second great California migration to find that golden pot in the airplane plants and the aeronautics trade. Tucked it in a bedroom drawer through a marriage, 2 sons, a funeral, and 2 graduations. Buried it deep packing for that one final job far, but not far enough away. Now, it seemed, was the time. It had been a tough week in the field, and I'd hoped to catch the satellite feed of 60 Minutes and maybe Columbo, but this finally seemed the time. I set the yellowing badge, number 76, I guessed how the brass kept track of their college boys, on top of the TV monitor, trying not to look in those damnably damned eyes this time. Bye, JR. Then I wrote this for you, whoever you wind up being. You can see the right people get it. Then I think I'll step out for a bit of air. The desert is beautiful at night, especially in the high beams of a double moon. The Last Supper, surprise party, murder, mystery. This is a complete satire, not intended to mock religion. I meant to enter this in. Write about a gallery whose paintings come alive at night. Oops. On the evening of April 6th, 30 AD, chaos ensued during an impromptu farewell dinner party. A hidden underground chamber hosted a jubilant soiree beneath the renowned Louvre Museum. The celebratory evening took a sinister turn as it transformed into a horrifying murder scene. The guests, driven by an overwhelming desire to uncover the culprit among them, were determined to solve the mysterious crime. The night began when the Louvre Gallery's lights faded to black. Mr. Dali flipped the sign on the door, reading closed. Greeting him as he stepped outside was a stunning display of swirling hues: cobalt blue, incandescent yellow, and verdant green intermingled in the starry sky, resembling confetti. The stars twinkled like a celestial choir, harmonizing with his melodic whistle. Their mystical light illuminated the sky. He followed the otherworldly glow as it led him back home. Unease settled over him as he walked. He suspected he might have left the doors unlocked or the lights on. Behind the museum's closed doors, 3 distorted clocks with persistent memories chimed 7 or 8 times, sounding garbled. The hands of the clock, resembling molten lava, melted across the front desk. The time dissolved and spread across the ornate chairs and marble floor. Across the way, bustling activity filled the refectory of Monastero di San Lorenzo. The atmosphere was a mix of intense excitement and underlying unease, capturing the poignant moment. Fragrant scents of yeast, toasted grains, melted butter, roasted meats, and aromatic herbs wafted through the air, tantalizing and mouth-watering. Shouting in the grand chamber, Andrew exclaimed, "Almost 8!" He fidgeted, holding a torch, and lit the remaining candles on the grand table. "This useless lighter won't work," he exclaimed, slamming it down on the table in frustration. Moonlight streamed through the windows, casting a radiant glow on the refectory. The flickering candles created a serene ambiance despite the commotion in the chamber. "To hell with it all," Peter mutters. He opens a bottle of Chianti and starts guzzling it from the lip of the wicker vessel, feeling annoyed. With red-stained lips, Peter exclaims, "This is an absolute catastrophe." John and Philip emerged from the kitchen, coughing and struggling to breathe, while a cloud of smoke engulfed them. The room fell silent. "We still have bread," John says, cowering behind Philip, hoping nothing was flying at his head through the air. A ruckus ensued. Bartholomew stomped his foot. "You need to pull yourself together. Guests will arrive at any moment. This night is supposed to be a celebration. Quit fighting like gladiators in the Monera." Thomas and Matthew rushed to the door as the bell chimed to greet their first guest. "Welcome, Mona. It brings me great joy to have you," Thomas said, escorting the introspective and ethereal figure through the door. With an enigmatic smile, hinting at hidden secrets and unspoken feelings, Mona thanked her hosts for the kind invitation. After Mona, guests flooded through the door. Peter appreciated the guests' punctuality because the guest of honor was due to appear soon. The young ladies of Avignon huddled in a corner. Nadira Mbali embodied the fierce spirit of independence by wearing splendid tribal patterns inspired by Africa. Her clothing celebrated her heritage. Isabella Ramos's distinct and striking features drew Nadira into deep conversations. They explored the complexities of womanhood and society's limiting expectations. Isabella's words were sharp and precise, dissecting human emotions with a scalpel. She challenged societal norms and conventions. Sofia Calderon's avant-garde cubist aesthetic captivated guests. Her fragmented and distorted forms shattered conventional ideas of representation. The quirky style invited viewers to critically examine their perceptions of reality, immersing them in an intriguing and thought-provoking experience. Ava Serrano radiated confidence and sensuality. Her unapologetic sexuality defied societal expectations of modesty and control. Ava fearlessly moved her body across the chambers like a dancer. She hobnobbed with guests while challenging preconceived notions of femininity and inviting them to confront their inhibitions. Carmen Reyes emerged while concealing her face with a mask. Her fearless advocacy for women's rights and empowerment was her prime topic of discussion. Against patriarchy, she wielded her words as weapons, her voice as sharp as her wit. In each debate, she advocated for gender equality. Carmen's unwavering commitment to justice and the refusal of silence symbolized strength and resilience. With a mesmerizing display of ethereal beauty, Venus, the goddess of love, revealed her presence. Her allure transcended the limitations of the mortal realm. The enchanting depths of her ocean blue eyes mirrored the boundless compassion and understanding that resided within her soul. As she mingled, she commanded attention with her statuesque figure, which exuded sensuality and strength. A charismatic and enigmatic lad, Adam flirted with Venus by boasting about his creation. The confidence in the mastery of his anatomy and intricate details evoked awe and inspiration in Venus. Adam's charm was undeniable, with piercing blue eyes that held untold stories. He witnessed her captivating charm and inner radiance, which mesmerized him. She offered solace and ignited the flames of passion within his heart. Venus was captivated by his brilliant mind, filled with insatiable curiosity and a humble demeanor. Isabella Fontaine was a ravishing and imaginative woman. Her demeanor enchanted Alessandro Fiore. They bonded over their shared passion for art. As they embraced, their love and desire for each other became apparent with every gentle stroke of her hair. Their passion reflected the love that burns within their hearts, and their souls became forever entwined in the kiss, heard worldwide. The guests surrounded a group of dogs dressed in human clothing, playing poker around a table. The dogs were all engaged in the game when a raven flew to the skylight, warning the guests that their guest of honor was nearing. Peter gathered the guests in the middle of the chamber, and as the doors opened, everyone yelled, "Surprise, Jesus!" Jesus paused, blushing with shock. He relished the moment, his kind eyes reflecting his deep compassion for everyone present. His serene and benevolent face radiated a sense of divine wisdom and love. Long, flowing hair and a well-groomed beard complemented his appearance. He moved across the marble floors elegantly, showcasing his spiritual authority and transcendence, while wearing a modest, billowing garment extending to the ground. After removing the plum cloak draped over his shoulders, he adjusted the sash around his waist. Everyone present was crowded around Jesus, eager to touch the hem of his garment or bask in his presence. When he spoke, he filled the room with awe and reverence. His words carried a weight of profound wisdom and grace. His eyes sparkled with kindness, drawing everyone in. The atmosphere shifted as a sense of peace and hope enveloped the room. Peter gathered the guests around the table, rallying them to make a toast. He held up his goblet and said, "To the man who brings light and love wherever he goes, may he bless all with his presence on the road that he ventures forth on. The Louvre will miss you, Jesus." To everyone's dismay, John and Philip stood and announced that their dinner had gone awry. They'd only be serving bread and butter. James the younger ran around filling everyone's glasses with wine to ease the tension caused by the unexpected change in dinner plans. Eliza Hawthorne stood out among the guests with serene strength and unwavering determination. Her piercing eyes, reminiscent of the golden hues of an autumn sky, mirrored her inner fortitude. Her hair, arranged in a bun, complemented her firm lips. They exuded an air of stoicism and resolve that belied her delicate features. In his convictions, Henry stayed steadfast with a few words. He gazed at the crowd with eyes resembling the roots of an ancient oak tree that shaded their farmhouse. He silently stood beside Eliza as she extended her invitation with effortless grace. She declares, "We propose to share the bounty of our garden, inviting everyone to partake in the fresh vegetables outside in our cart." With his broad shoulders and hands roughened by years of manual labor, Henry showcases his physical prowess. They embodied rugged masculinity and muted strength as he reached for a piece of bread. Eliza's hands, calloused from years of hard work on the family farm, coaxing life from the fertile soil, handed him the warm butter. Laughter and chatter filled the room. Everyone enjoyed the simple meal and each other's company. Wine flowed with the harmonious chatter, celebrating Jesus. Amelia Munch interrupted the chatter by wailing a piercing scream, which reverberated through the refectory like shattering glass. Fear and existential angst etched anxiety across her porcelain skin. Her haunting beauty and piercing green eyes conveyed a profound sense of terror. Everyone gathered around curiously to see a nude woman lying on a couch covered in blood. Judas Iscariot declares that someone among them is the menaced assassin. The group exchanges nervous glances, unsure of whom to trust. Suspicions grow, causing the once warm and inviting atmosphere to turn cold and tense. Iscariot's accusation lingers, casting a shadow over the joyous gathering. With unwavering resolve and dignity, Margaret Whittaker started whistling an eerie tune as she rocked in her chair. Despite facing hardships, she exuded tranquility and grace. Her silver hair was pulled back tight in a bun, and her hands were folded in her lap. Though tired and worn from years of worry, Margaret's eyes sparkled with muted intelligence, as if she knew something. Her calm demeanor drew others to her, commanding their attention. As the evening wore on, whispers of suspicion and curiosity circulated among the guests. Margaret's enigmatic presence had drawn them all in, and unease settled over the room as they awaited her next move. Amelia Monk wailed a piercing scream out of nowhere again. The scream reverberated through the refectory like shattering glass. Fear etched her porcelain skin with anxiety and existential angst. Her haunting beauty and piercing green eyes again convey a profound sense of terror. With a sense of exacerbation, Mona Lisa wonders, what is it now? Her face changes, adorned with a tapestry of emotions that flows with each fleeting moment, captivating all who dared to bask in her presence. Mona Lisa possesses the uncanny ability to cloak her thoughts and feelings in an aura of mystery. Intrigued, all the guests surround her. "The girl with the pearl earring only wears one," stuttered Emma Munch. "Behold, it is right there," she said, pointing to the lifeless woman. Underneath her body, a pearl sparkled, unraveling a clue. Munch's discovery challenged the guests to confront their wildest fears. Amelia epitomized the situation with anxiety and the human condition. She reminded everyone of their shared vulnerabilities in the situation. The need for camaraderie and understanding in this tragic moment was undeniable, urging immediate action. The girl with the pearl earring reached up to cover her bare ear. Her delft was sublime and mysterious. The girl's modest, dark-colored gown and her long chestnut hair exuded strength and resilience, but her piercing blue eyes divulged her guilt, unveiling her hidden desire and rebellion against societal expectations. "Show us your matching earrings," said the bulldog, wearing a top hat and a monocle. A terrier in a tuxedo, a dachshund in a sweater vest, and a golden retriever in a baseball cap chimed in. "Where is your missing trinket, yeah?" They quipped and resumed the game of poker to bet on whodunit. Admitting her guilt, Amelia, the intelligent and keen girl with the opal accessory, takes responsibility. She knew escaping this blunder would be impossible. Her eyes reflect the depth of her inner turmoil and dreams. "Envy clouded my vision, distorting my perception of reality," she cried. At a nearby diner, a police officer was consoling a young boy who had run away from home. Out of nowhere, his walkie-talkie crackled to life, notifying him of a homicide in progress. The officer rushed to the scene, apprehending the girl with the missing pearl earring believed to be involved in the murder. The situation's urgency demanded swift action, and the officer quickly secured the suspect. Jesus blessed her as she repented of her sins and was hauled off to Artemisia Gentileschi prison for high-risk female offenders in Surrey. His compassion grew as he saw the remorse in her eyes, knowing she was just a victim of circumstances. As she left in handcuffs, he committed to visiting her and helping her turn her life around. Amelia looked back at the kind-hearted man, with tears streaming down her face, grateful for his compassion during her darkest moment. She vowed to make amends for her past mistakes and to strive for a better future. With a determined spirit, Jesus watched the girl with the pearl earring disappear out the door, vowing to guide her toward redemption. The scene touched the police officer's heart, sparking a glimmer of hope in his chest. Perhaps the girl's story will have a different ending with the Savior by her side. A sense of unease lingered in Mr. Dolly's mind as he rattled his keys in the museum's front door. He meticulously inspected the premises, ensuring every door was locked and the lights were extinguished. When the last switch flipped, a surprise gasp reverberated through the room. The startled guests scampered, their footsteps echoing in the deserted halls, the thumping. The museum's intercom crackled on with train station static. "Hello, Norville Museum." I ducked at the sound, trying to escape it, cracking my eardrums. He spoke fast, like a sports announcer, at the most critical part of the game. Welcome to your nightly broadcast from your favorite night guard. As always, we must get the boring things out of the way before we have some fun. His voice trailed up and down with the meter of a radio host. It was well practiced. If there is any other human in this fine establishment other than your Steve and Linda, remember, you are stuffed. If there is anyone else here, you will be arrested, and you could be charged with robbery as you are on the premises 30 minutes after closing. He sounded way too excited for his long night shift. So, if there are any other living souls in this building, we get to start my favorite game. Hide and go, speak. I'll count to 30, and then the game starts. Have fun. I could hear the big generators for each light system shutting off, their cranks getting closer each time until the painting in front of me darkened. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light of the exit sign, his words started to set in my head. You will be arrested. I couldn't be arrested, not again, and especially not with robbery charges. Over the still air, a whistle was carried from deep within the museum. It tickled my ears with its swinging tune. With the lightest footsteps I could make, I reached the exit sign. Touching the cold metal made my hair stand on end as I gently pressed on the long bar until a loud click crashed through the room like a cymbal. The whistling stopped, and the silence became much louder. I looked around frantically, removing some of my precious light as my hair whipped around my face. If I was caught, I would have to look into my mother's eyes as she said, "I wouldn't be surprised if she did this, Judge." I couldn't hear that again. My eyes caught a big pot in the middle of the room. It was decorated with strips and little dancing people moving across the two-dimensional plane. As carefully as possible, I opened the lid and slipped my first leg into it. My footsteps sounded like a gong as I put my second in and slipped my body past the hole into the pot. Once the lid was over my head, I was in total darkness. Not even putting my hand in front of my face would give my eyes information. My breathing sounded like it was through a megaphone as it rose up and down, breathing in the clay, which was probably hundreds of years old. I tried to close my eyes, even though it changed nothing, and think about something other than where I was. The more I thought, the more my breathing sounded like it was coming from a tornado. My wind created gale force winds faster as I felt water drip onto my folded knees. My mind raced almost as fast. A thumping started to grow louder. At first, I thought it was from outside that he had found me. It kept getting faster, like he was running in place right outside my pot, teasing me with the promise of captivity, playing with me, just like his stupid voice played up and down like a carousel. I put a hand over my mouth to quiet my breath. Thump, 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 thump. Over and over, like an incessant heartbeat, his feet went up and down and up and down. For minutes, his feet went on, just right outside my pot. The drips on my knees were getting bigger and more frequent, adding another sound to my existence. At any moment, he could just open the lid and get this all over with, but he was choosing to mess with me. Thump drip, thump drip. Over and over, faster and faster. I couldn't control my breath, and what did it matter if he was going to torment me? He knew I was there. All he had to do was open the lid and let the red light in. Let it flood in and wash over my face like a river, rinse away the guilt for just a brief moment. Instead, he chose to mess with me. He chose to step and step just outside my reach. I could barely control myself. I started to rock back and forth, and with me, the pot. Thump, drip, clang. Thump, drip, clang. I couldn't do it again. I didn't want to do it again. But when if he opened that lid, I would have to. He deserved it for stepping over and over. His never ending. Thump, thump, thump. My legs started to tingle with anticipation. I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins. My breath got faster as I stared at where I guessed the lid was. My pot rocked back and forth with me, getting ready for his fly-like hands to lift the lid. That's all he was, just a disgusting fly, but all he did was thump, thump, thump. I felt even more adrenaline burst through me as the rocking got faster, my breath got faster, and his shoes got faster. I have to. He'll get me if I don't. I have to. Rung through my head as the thump, thump, drip, thump, thump, clang rang on. A new sound sounded as a voice called out from the other side of the pot's walls. "Hey!" Another shot of adrenaline cracked open like lightning, and I could feel my legs practically vibrating from the sound. The thumping from his shoes meeting the hardwood floor, my breath at record-breaking speeds, the rocking only being contained by my leans, and drip dripping that reminded my legs to be ready. I want to do it again. I leaped out of the pot before his hand touched it. My head was buzzing with sounds, screams, thumps, tears, and then more screaming. Sounds of teeth on flesh and nails on muscle rang out throughout the silent museum like the most beautiful symphony. Thumps of bodies slamming on the ground, drips of ruby blood, and winds cut from hands swatting me away. I had done it again, and yet it did not go. Thump, 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 in too deep. Sean sat alone in a dark confession booth, fighting back his tears. The mesh slat to his right took the shape of the crucifix. A door clicked open, and light shone through the slat, before vanishing as the door shut. "I wondered if I would see you again," said the priest, sitting beyond the divider to Sean's right. The devil sat on his left. "Read it to me one more time, Father," Sean said. The voice that spoke through the crucifix was soft. "I would be more help if you just told me." "Please, Father, don't. Just read me the passage." There was a slight shuffle of papers, and the priest began. "Forthwith Judas came to Jesus and said, 'Hail, Master,' and kissed him. Then they came, laid hands upon Jesus, and took him." Without a word, Sean left. Moonlight spilled across the Liffey while the sound of beer bottles clattering carried from the other side of the river. Sean meandered with his hands stuffed in his coat pockets, while his breath fogged in the cold air. A set of headlights crept from behind, casting his shadow lankly across the cobblestone. "Finn," called a hushed voice from behind. "Finn, where the heck have you been? I've been looking all over for you." Sean tensed, not wanting that name to follow him. Not tonight. He turned and held up a gloved hand, blocking the car's light. All he could see was the shadow hanging out of the driver's window, but he recognized the voice. It was his handler. "Christy?" Feck's sakes. Christy stepped out of the car and closed the door, the sound loud in the quiet street. He paced over to Sean and they walked together. Sean sighed. "I'm sorry, I had to." "See the fecking priest again?" Christy touched Sean's shoulder and continued. "Finn, it'll be all right, lad. We're almost there. 5 years of hard work and it's all about to pay off." He released a large breath. The vapor rose and faded. "Feels longer." "Aye." Sean knew the question was coming and wondered whether Christy genuinely cared about his visit to the priest, or if he was simply trying to maintain a sense of familiarity. 5 years, and Christy was the only one from the outside Sean was allowed to contact. He'd requested a therapist, and Christy had come back a month later with the response, "Can't, lad. Too risky. Anything you need to get off your chest, you tell me." How could he tell Christy he wanted out of the gig? After 5 years of being deep undercover within the largest criminal gang in Ireland, how could he share his doubts now? "So," began Christy, "the question, the reason he was here, incoming, have they told you who you're going to whack?" Sean walked over to the river's railing and placed his hands upon it. "Neil," he muttered. "What?" "No," he said. "Don't be so hard on yourself. The guard's never going to let one of their own commit murder, not even to off some degenerate." Sean nodded. "As soon as you know anything, and I mean anything, location, victim, accomplices, you let me know and I'll pass it on. Conspiracy to commit murder. That's all we need. Besides, I shan't be hard to find. I'm stuck chauffeuring around the old Bell and Michiel. God knows I want to put that cranky so-and-so in cuffs myself. All right?" Sean nodded again. The truth lay on his tongue, involved in a bitter feud with a lie. "Christy," he said as his handler headed back to the car. Christy turned, the headlights again shining and making him appear like an obscure shadow. "You right?" Sean opted for the truth. "Tomorrow. The hit's tomorrow." The next day, Sean met Liam, Michiel's son and Sean's unwitting informant, at the Gaelic Warrior Boxing Club. The 6 a.m. session stunk to high heaven with sweat, while the sound of dozens of gloves smacking pads filled the large shed. Sean climbed the steps onto the main ring where Liam watched Patrick, the bullman Doherty, a young gun who eyed the world title. "Finn," said Liam, "what's the crack?" They clapped hands and embraced. The first thing Sean wanted to do was to ask about the hit, but he was well practiced in pretending to be someone he wasn't, so he kept his conversation cordial, waiting for Liam to bring it up. "How's he going?" Sean asked, gesturing at the bullman, who was busting a sharp combo on his trainer's pads. Liam tilted his head, a habit usually reserved for discussing drug trafficking, and muttered, "He's got talent, but he's a bit of a hothead. I should get him in with you, teach him how to stay calm." "Calm?" Sean laughed. "I don't remember being calm. I just remember being belted." "Nonsense," said Liam. "I didn't take you on 'cause you can scrap. I manage hundreds of boxers. They can all do that. You can handle pressure, Finn. That's why we chose you for today." Sean's insides tensed, but his eyes remained unflinching. "Nothing I ain't done before." Sean hadn't told Christy the entire truth last night. He had told him the hit was going to be today, which it was. He also said he didn't know who they were taking out or where, and that was the truth. But he had said Liam wouldn't be there, and that was bollocks. "Well, you ain't done none like this," said Liam. "It's a Garda, a dirty coppa." Sean looked towards the boxing class taking place on the floor, hiding his reaction from Liam. Cold air swept over his skin. His shoulders shuddered, and his mind flashed to images from 4 years ago. He was 27, and the bright lights dazzled overhead. The coach was there, but he hardly remembered him. He remembered Michiel and Liam in his corner. His opponent was some hard-bred scouser, as bald as a hard-boiled egg, with a mashed nose and a bitter scowl. The scouser eyeballed Sean, and Sean was shit-scared. "Don't worry about that prick," Liam had said. "You don't look tough. It's some inbred deformity." Sean turned and leant over the corner ring. Michiel rubbed his shoulders, speaking sternly. "Come out with 3 fast jabs. Bam, bam, bam. He'll slip the last one, then pow right hook. You tracking?" Sean nodded and spat out agreement over his mouthguard. "All right," said Liam. "Give him hell." The bell dinged. It had been a tough fight, one that went the distance, and when it was all over, the name Finn was called out. He'd won, and the rest of the night was a blur down at Temple Bar. But before the first pint was raised, Sean had been overcome with a feeling, a deep relaxation that settled itself across every inch of his skin. A feeling that told him he didn't have to watch over his shoulder anymore. A feeling that said, "Relax. They trust you, and you trust them. You trust me, don't you, Finn?" Liam patted his shoulder. Sean swallowed and turned back to face him. "Of course I do," he said, his heart burning. That same flame that used to cinder at almost every conversation in his first year while he wormed his way in. Now they had discovered he was undercover, that he was a rat, and they were going to off him. "Good," Liam said. "Trust is important." A car pulled up in the drive, visible beyond the shed's rolled-up door. Christy stepped out of the front, shot Sean a troubled glance, and opened the back door. Michael, the old-school hardman and head of the largest drug trafficking cartel in all of Europe, stepped out. Michial, gray-haired with a stalwart face, raised his hand and beckoned the two men. "Come on, lads. Christy's driving." In the back seat, Sean kept his arms folded, squeezing his rib cage as it rose and fell with measured breaths. Liam was on his left, silent and staring out the window as the streets of Dublin flitted by. "I've been in this game for over 30 years, said Michel from the front seat. "And I'll tell you one thing, I've learned a lot. Firstly, if it falls into your lap, then it's too good to be true. Left here," he said to Christy. Christy flicked the indicator. "If you tell me the location, I can just punch it into maps." "No," said Michial. "Where we're going, I don't want the phone to remember." Christy's eyes burrowed into Sean through the rear-view mirror. Michial's gnarled finger appeared in the space between the two front seats, and he continued. "Second thing relates to the first. Be careful who you let in. The people you shouldn't trust, the ones who are out to get you, they make it easy. Make your life seem easy, I mean. Anything worthwhile is earned through hard work. Same goes for loyalty. The same thing I'm telling you, Finn. I've been telling Liam all my life. If it comes easy, it's cheap." Apart from the occasional direction from Michial, the rest of the drive was silent, although Sean was in constant communication to the Lord. "God Almighty, I ask for your courage as I venture once more into the crossroads. I'm torn between lives and ashamed to admit I have worn a mask for so long that I have forgotten my own face. I used to honor this job, finding those who lived between the cracks of a broken system, but I find myself slipping deeper into the same space with each passing hour. I am in too deep, and I fear the greater sin, to break my oath to the Garda Síochána, or to turn my back on what has become my family. I'm to blame, Father. I sowed the seeds of betrayal, and now I reap the bitter harvest. As Dublin has witnessed my struggle, may the heavens hear my plea. Pull me from this labyrinth, Lord, once and for all. Amen." Christy pulled up at Ballymun, just north of the M50. Their destination was a large pasture that stretched between Dublin Airport and a litter-filled caravan park. "We're walking," said Michial. The clouds above were a lamb of gray, and although the grass was short, the men seemed to trudge. They were heading in the direction of the airport, by the pasture's boundary, where a snarl of bushes clambered along a chain-link fence. A shovel stood pressed into a mound of dirt, and beneath that opened a wide and deep hole. You really think we trusted you, you fucking rat? Said Michel, turning around with a black pistol in his hand. Sean closed his eyes, trying to dampen his blazing heart. His lungs pulled in a thick breath of air, which only fed the fire more oxygen. He wanted to cry like he almost did in the confession booth, and figured he very well might. Why not? Sean opened his eyes and saw the pistol aimed straight at Christy. He's an undercover, said Michel. Been pretending to be my driver, all the while sniffing around my backside. Christy's hands were up, his eyes wide as headlights. Number I'm no coppa. Dirty bastard, said Liam, as he pulled out a pistol of his own, a small silver revolver. Mitchell pointed at his son's gun. Finn, you're doing the honors. Liam held out the revolver. Do this, and you're one of us, for true. Sean took the revolver, which was heavier than he anticipated. It sat in his palm, the same size as his hand. The bullet's golden casing stuck out from the chambers. One sat by the pin, anticipating the spark that would explode Sean, free from the maze that had become his life. He just didn't know where to aim it. At Michiel or Christy. Who owns this pasture? Sean heard himself say. Don't worry, said Michel. I know the farmer. The land is only ever used for grazing. The hole's deep, and they don't crop here. The soil will never be disturbed. No one will find him. Sean took a moment, hearing the screech of a plane's engine as it readied for takeoff. Then he aimed the gun at Christy. On your knees. Christy took a step back. You can't be serious. God damn it, get on your knees. Christy began to bend. Turn around, said Sean, not wanting to see his face. Turn around and get on your knees. Christy's eyes were darting around as if trying to find some sense in the world. He turned and got on his knees. Please, he began. Please, 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 Jesus Christ, please, God, please. Sean stepped behind Christy and held the gun to his head. Off in the distance, a plane began its long ascent into the clouds above. Please, mumbled Christy. Sean, please. Sean leant down, kissed Christy on the cheek, and whispered in his ear. My name is Finn, the boy with frozen wings. You have my attention, says the Grand Assassin. Who? He. The boy drops his gaze to the Varos gold coin on the tavern's backroom table, his guarantee of safe audience, then looks back up at the man. The Grand Assassin's wrinkles and white hair may or may not be real, but the eyes are. Pinprick pupils caught in still water stare back at the boy. I can't say it. Have you heard the story of the little bird with the frozen wings? The Grand Assassin asks. Are there two birds and a stone in it? No, lad. It's the one about the bird flying south for the winter. The air's so cold that his wings turn to ice and he falls into a meadow. Do you know what happens to this bird? The boy shakes his head, platinum hair peeking out despite his hood's concealing efforts. A cow comes by and drops some dung on the frozen bird, and in this steaming pile of crap, the bird's wings begin to thaw. He's ready to fly again, but now he's stuck. So, he chirps for help. The boy watches the Grand Assassin's bare hand hover over the Varos coin as the man whistles a plaintive tune that ends in a soft squawk. Finally, a passing cat hears the bird's cry and comes over to investigate. It digs the bird free, cleans him in the grass, and eats him. What does it mean? Asks the boy, willing the Grand Assassin to touch the gold coin. First, not everyone who shits on you is your enemy. Second, if you're in deep shit, it's best to keep your mouth shut. But most importantly, it means that not everyone who gets you out of shit is your friend. So do you want my help? Yes. The boy throws off his hood and says the name of the crown prince. The grand assassin's hand drops under the weight of that name. His fingers touch the Varos coin on the table, and some reptilian part of his mind notes that the coin is slick, oily even. But his higher consciousness is focused on the face before him. He is staring at the crown prince's exact likeness. Yes, I'm his decoy. The boy pauses, hoping the man will fill in the rest. But I don't have to be. The grand assassin sucks in his breath once he realizes the lookalike's audacity. Steal the life of the crown prince, then slip in to take his place. Can he do it? How will you explain his missing decoy then? Fire, the boy says, matter-of-factly. The man opens his mouth, then closes it again. He's used to watching men squirm in the wake of what's left unsaid, but this boy makes him feel like the talkative one. He watches the boy for any sign of uncertainty, but all he gets in return is a polite blank stare. Finally, he slides the coin of Varos into his leather purse. As an afterthought, he wipes his oily fingers on his jerkin. Then, the boy tells him when and where. Their audience concluded, the boy pulls up his hood and leaves the tavern's back room. He weaves through day drunks, then through the city Azamal's maze of alleyways. He stops at a bustling marketplace and takes in his surroundings. He doesn't think the grand assassin has changed his mind and decided to follow now that their safe audience is over. No, the man thinks himself a cat poised above the future king. Still, a diversion wouldn't hurt. He listens to the different voices, then joins the crowd. There's a pretty lass, he says in a baritone voice, and pinches a fishwife's arse on his way past. The fishwife accosts a nearby man who's speaking in that same baritone voice to his friends. The man stumbles against a cloth merchant's stall. "Thief! Stop, thief!" the boy cries in the bewildered shopkeeper's own voice. Then, he nabs a new cloak to throw over his own as he melts away into the pandemonium. Along the way, he tears off the tainted gloves that he used to touch the Varos coin. Back in the castle confines, the boy is in another back room of sorts, a half-remembered guard tower. There's nothing to guard here because this edge of the castle wall ends on a cliff, a chasm forged centuries ago when the gods threw Varos down from on high. The inside is lined with scrolls and manuscripts bound between boards. This is the record keeper's domain. The record keeper lost his tongue for some long ago unspoken crime. From the way the man walks, the boy knows that was not all that has been cut from him. The crown prince never comes here because he is a cow whose bovine brow cannot bear the burden of reading. But the boy loves the record keeper. He is his greatest friend, his greatest teacher, the one who showed him the scrolls on poisons long forgotten. At first, the boy thought poison alone would be his answer, but the best one, Auria's kiss, takes time to act. There would be no guarantee he'd be positioned to take the crown prince's place unnoticed once the kiss called him home. Silent but ever listening, the record keeper had shown the boy a manuscript on Varos and his assassin cult. Yes, the coin, the grand assassin. It's all coming together, but there's still time to talk yet. The boy and the record keeper have their own way of speaking. The boy blasts through his repertoire of voices while pausing to listen to the tongueless man's eyes. They sit now facing each other with an imaginary coin in between them. Have you heard the story of the little bird with the frozen wings? The boy asks in a perfect imitation of the grand assassin. The record keeper's eyes brim over with pride, with adoration for the protege who gives him voice. Late in the night, he will bar the servants' quarters and start a fire. There will always be more servants, and no one will count bones to make sure the crown prince's decoy is among the last lot. For now, he watches as the boy climbs the crumbling guard tower, then jumps to the nearby hemlock tree. The boy balances on the end of a branch, then he's over the castle wall. The record keeper says a silent prayer that the boy will return riding the crown prince's horse. Deep within the hardwood forest, the boy waits at the appointed spot. He cannot see the grand assassin, but he can hear horses in the distance. The crown prince is fox hunting with his retinue and outing among sycophants. The boy shouts out a fox's warning call, a vixen's scream to draw the dogs. He throws his voice and steps behind a tree as the foxhounds bumble past him. The crown prince, whose horse is by far the fastest and whose friends dare not outpace him, is close behind with no other riders in sight. Something detaches itself from the undergrowth, and the crown prince falls from his saddle. He has time to low once in pain before the thing is on him. The now never king jerks, once then falls silent. The grand assassin is caked in mud. Only his still-water eyes are recognizable. They watch as the boy pulls off the crown prince's pinky ring. A knife touches the boy's throat. The grand assassin is saying something, but his words are cut short by the sound of approaching hooves. The knife vanishes. So does the crown prince's body, as the grand assassin pulls his prey into the undergrowth. With feline grace, the boy hops onto the crown prince's horse and turns to meet his retinue. Later that night, as fire burns away the memory of the decoy, the grand assassin will stare at the night sky. The stars will shimmer and merge into one bright light as the numbness in his fingertips creeps up his arm and seeps into his heart. That will be Oria's kiss, courtesy of Varos's coin, calling him home. The grand assassin won't curse the new crown prince, the future king who would have owed him everything. No, he'll be too busy staring at the sky and trying to take flight. As for his words cut short in the woods, the new crown prince remembers them perfectly. Remember this moment, and you will. And what will the boy of many voices with only the tongueless to know his secret do? Well, some things are better left unsaid. Diary of a serial killer. How might one endure the silent and secluded nature of winter? Be the bear, enter a deep cave, and dream. Jacqueline Suskin. I probably shouldn't be writing this, but oh fucking well. When the most precious thing lodged in your heart is ripped out and crushed by an unthinking alcoholic asshole driving with a revoked license, you do things, unimaginable things, and not just burying your beloved 8-year-old son, which was not on my shitty life bingo card, oh be these. But life wasn't shitty before. The word should be capitalized, before. No, better yet, the before. Because now, life was rent in two, forever separated by the gaping maw of rage. The before and the after. A fissure of overwhelming grief that quickly cracked, allowing the steaming, boiling lava to emerge from her core. Oh, he would pay. That drunken dickhead. His money won't protect him. Not from me. They gave her the codename Mama Bear, but he never imagined that she was holed up in a cave. On a hunch, he came out to the Pennsylvania woods at night, alone. Common sense and the FBI handbook would label his actions reckless at best and suicidal at worst. But he didn't fear for his safety. Mama Bear targeted a certain type of prey, Except for being a male, he didn't fit her profile. Funny, they were both profilers. October snuck up behind him, picking up the crisp air, tossing it around. Playing offense, it switched tactics, threw it toward his face, temporarily snatching his breath. He continued to climb, quiet, crunching under his boots, allowing the patches of clearing and the light of the frosted full moon to guide his steps. He'd reach the cave no matter what, so the easy way was the best way. He put his hand in his front pocket, felt the crumpled page of a diary. The paper crinkled like the fallen leaves underfoot. It was mailed to him at his office, this one and the other entries. He had the sense to turn in the others, but not this one. Well, most of the others. She vowed to herself that she would abstain from killing for a month, or so she wrote. By his accounts, it was day 30. He hoped her undated entry referred to October. At least he would have a day. One day. It was easier than I thought. I would say too easy. But that motherfucker mowed down my baby like a shirtless, beer-bellied jagoff, hurrying to cut the grass before the Buccos game. Maybe it shouldn't be hard. Justice shouldn't be hard. Not in the semblance of a fair world. Leaves skittered and scurried around his legs, tumbling over each other like playing squirrels. He stopped, inhaled deeply. He loved the smell of fall, that last exhale of trees mixing with ripe decomposition. I'm so glad I live in a world of Octobers. He smiled at the memory of his sister quoting Anne Shirley, not so long ago. His smile fell. Not so long ago, yet forever ago. Tragedy has a way of altering time, elongating some parts and compressing others. He looked up through the lattice of bare limbs, a web of gnarled fingers, the indigo sky stitched with rhinestones. Did the stars foretell it? It was the mutable signs of the zodiac: Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, BTK, Dahmer, Bundy, the ones born at the end of a season, not in the middle, like the fixed signs, like Scorpio, like her. You'd think one was enough, but it wasn't. I realized AA was just one of many. Sure, I settled my score, but what of the other moms? South many, blights, diseases walking the earth, infecting others with their cruelty, their carelessness, their capriciousness. Someone had to bring order, just like Melville Dewey did to book classification. 000 to 999. He considered turning around to walk back down the hill. He turned, but didn't move. In the distance, the twinkling lights of downtown Pittsburgh weaved a terrestrial constellation of bridges, one-way traffic, and sundry skyscrapers. The steel city, just like its people, metal backbones, gritty guts, and honest hearts. He craved a sandwich from Primanti's. Any sandwich. That was the last time he saw her. At Primanti's. The original one. He wasn't one to second-guess himself. His mom drummed it into their heads from the cradle. Trust self first, last, and only. First, last, only. Thanks to the internet and social media, it's not hard to find someone, or their misdeeds. What was once relegated to a diary like this is now vomited onto Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for all to see. Many lap it up, probably because it makes them feel less uncomfortable about their own stupid decisions and meaningless lives. Here for the mindless braggart. Many blowhards make for less research when it comes to this side gig. He cracked his neck, onward and upward, one foot in front of the other, crunching leaves, whipping wind, snapping twigs. Up, up he climbed. He was getting close. His hand reached towards his front pocket. Again. He read the page dozens of times, just like the rest. He couldn't help it. Just touching the decal-edged diary page brought clarity and understanding. He had to find her first. Could it be that easy? I think this might be my last entry. I knew it was a bad idea. No, make that bad idea. To write things down. But writers write. Fish swim. Birds fly. Dogs bark. Writers write. And mama bears? Well, unless you're bent from birth, looking at you, mutable signs, no one sets out to be a killer. Or, as I like to differentiate, a remover. Scrooge, or Dickens, had it partly right. Decrease the surplus population. He just needed to add of assholes. Decrease the surplus population of assholes. Dangerous, foul, hollow assholes. He neared the ridge. He was getting close. He pulled out the wrinkled diary page. He couldn't help it. The moon illuminated the page, but he couldn't make out the words. Strange glyphs, occultic squiggles, just like those found on the astrological charts she used to interpret. Meaningless symbols to the untrained eye, but metaphysical gold to the mystic. He didn't need to be able to read the entry. He had it memorized. The cave. He could see the entrance. Dark, yawning. An inky maw, just like her rage. He reached into the other pocket for his flashlight. She beat him to it. Her flashlight shone on the ground ahead so as not to blind him. Hey sis. Hey bro. What took you so long? No junior league. Running away, starting over. It's not as easy as people think. You have to give up everything. Oh, that part's easy. Everyone thinks we are all traceable, that you can't really hide. But, see, everything is tied to your identity, your papers. If you change those, you are a different person. Fingerprints? If they're in the system, if you've ever been fingerprinted, it's a little trickier. But it can be done. Oh, that's right. You're a teacher, so of course you've had background checks. Well, you'll never teach again, so it won't matter. What? I told you, you have to give up everything. When changing identities and dropping off the radar, you have to change what you do. Whatever habits you had, wherever you went, do elsewise. You won't be hanging out in bookstores anymore, and you can't join the junior league in Denver if you were in every junior league of every city you ever lived in. Change your appearance, of course, but even as a brunette, you can't join the local improv group or historical society. That's where they will look for you. Join the Corvette Club and build a persona as an expert in 1972 Flybird Corvette transmission modifications, or whatever might be a car thing that you know nothing about and could care less about right now. You can join the Quilt Club, or the Daughters of the Mayflower, I guess. If the most important thing to you is dropping out, disappearing, disconnecting, and avoiding the consequences of what you did, you have to truly start over. You cannot be the same person, because when they come looking for you, they will look for her. Changing your papers and license and online trail are just technicalities. Harder technicalities, of course, given the internet and government, but just a technicality. But you have to be willing to change, and I'm really not getting that about you. What is the good of posting misleading social media content like faking a trip to France before abandoning it all if you are just going to go to the city you've talked about since you were a kid? Oh, now you're upset? What did you think this would be like? You would change your name from Emma to Emily and go live your exact life somewhere else, just without going to jail? Were you going to get a husband named Jason, too? Oh, that was cruel. I'm so sorry. You poor thing, dealing with the consequences of your actions one way or the other. Look, I don't think you are cut out for this. You haven't really thought it through. What? No, I won't return the deposit. I don't know. That puts me at risk if I get you transplanted and then you show up at the first community theater audition and get nabbed. Yes, they will. They will be looking for you. Once they follow the dots back to you, you are a goner. They need someone to pin this on. Look, lady, it's not like you were skipping out on a credit card bill or a boring husband. A flashy murder like this, there will be a manhunt. Your picture will be out. You have to go somewhere you never talked about and have no connection to. Change what you look like. Lay low for a while. And then don't do anything you've ever done before. What kind of life is that? What kind of question is that? A life out of jail, I guess. You know what? We're done. I'm out. If you can't, okay, calm down. Yes, fine, I can still help you. But Jesus, lady, I'm not a psychiatrist. You do this or don't. I don't care. You go home, the back way, please, with your GPS and location off, and call the police and turn yourself in with some kind of sob story, or you give me your license and credit cards and goddamn library card, everything, and take this airline ticket and this ID and catch the 4 p.m. flight to Indianapolis. Well, why not Indianapolis? Have you ever been there before? Well then, that's why. Go home and... No, you can't go home and say goodbye. You haven't heard a word I've said. Get out and dash. Oh, that's better. Good. Small bills. At least you listened to one thing I said. Let's see. Yep. That's all of it. You're going through with this then? Give me that. No, the whole purse. You can have back anything that doesn't have your name on it. Take this. You are Sarah Jackson. There's an airline ticket, driver's license, birth certificate, and 1 credit card. Here's the info and PIN for the credit card. Set up an online account. Change the address as soon as you get settled. No passport. You didn't pay me enough to leave the country. In a year, you hear me? Wait a year. You can apply for more credit. You are an orphan and a widow and have no kids. There's a paper with your history and family. Memorize it and destroy it. Do not be found with that. No one keeps around a paper to remind them who their grandparents are. You'll pass a state background check in Indiana, but a federal might get tricky. Try not to get fingerprinted. Yes, you can work. Any job you can fake. Work for cash if you can, but don't draw attention to yourself. Well, just make up a resume that you can do. There's one more service I provide. If you need a reference, call this number. Jenny will set you up. You'll get a number for them to call and get a good reference. That's the only reason to call this number. I can't get you out of any other bullshit. Well, congrats, Sarah. You have 3 hours to get to the airport. Walk about 4 blocks before you catch a cab. No, I don't care. Any direction. No, leave your car. No, you can't take your car to the airport. Are you kidding? They find your car, check cameras and manifests, and it takes them about 5 minutes to figure out Indiana. No, we can't sell it for you. Get everything you need out of it now. Listen, leave anything with your name. Don't take a receipt or Starbucks cup, for God's sake. It has to be abandoned. We'll take it out State Route 6. They'll have to dredge the quarry to make sure you didn't off yourself. Oh my God. Yeah, you're welcome, lady. You're all set. You kept about 1,000 cash like I told you, right? Split it up, put it in different places. All right, good luck. Remember, don't catch a cab right out front. Walk a ways first. Oh my God, what a piece of work. Jenny, I'll be out. I have a deposit to make. Have Mario take this Corolla out to the quarry, the usual. Her? Nah, she won't make it. I give it about a month. Someone will spot her at a bookstore. Some people just can't handle change. Justice will be served. Sunrise painted the rain-swept rocks of the castle gold as she poured poison into her husband's morning whiskey. The fire of the spirit would mask the ice of the paralytic, which had been crippling Lord Blackstone for months. Lady Gemma Blackstone had everything arranged for the death of her husband would be slow, deservedly so. Revenge was a dish best served cold, and Algernon Blackstone liked ice in his whiskey. Gemma watched the chest of her hated husband rise and fall. His crackling breaths came in stutters. The poison had started work on his lungs. She has lessened the dose to ensure he didn't die suddenly. Everyone needed to know was that Lord Blackstone was a sick man. His twisted mind would meet its match in the gnarled agony of his flesh. She smiled sweetly. Best to always smile in case he was looking. Gemma played the part of a doting wife. She fluffed his pillows. She changed the bedpan. She stoked the fire in the night when the servants were gone. "Gemma, is that you?" he rasped, coughing. "It's Algie. What can I get you?" she asked him in the simpering voice he knew her by. "How is it? Do you feel better?" "Maybe," he wheezed. "A solid breakfast will do me the word of good." Gemma nodded and called the butler. "Reginald, Lord Blackstone is awake. Bring the wheelchair." "My whiskey," Lord Blackstone wheezed. "Can't start the day without it." He took the ready crystal tumbler in stiff hands. She had to help him sip it down. "You know you shouldn't, my love. It's your worst vice." All old men need vices. Lord Blackstone flashed his gold teeth, then closed his eyes in pain as his lungs shot through with agonizing needles of fire. Whiskey burnt away sleep. "Good morning, my lord," said Reginald. The wrinkled butler, older than the stones of the castle, wheeled in a chair that creaked with every turn of the oak wheels. "Good morning, Lady Blackstone." "Good morning, Reginald," she said. Together they helped the gnarled old man into his chair. The butler insisted on pushing him to the dining room. Above the table hung a painting of a hanging family entitled "Justice Will Be Served." Gemma had commissioned the painting to remind her of her mission. Algernon Blackstone had her entire family executed for theft when she was just a girl. Gemma had escaped only because she'd been out on an errand when her mother, father, brother, and sister were sent to the gallows. Only her father had stolen, and only enough food to feed the children. The standard punishment had been the loss of a hand, an acceptable risk for a man who wanted to feed his loved ones. Instead, the Lord of Blackstone Castle had chosen to make an example of the whole Fisher family. High on her stool on the gallows, Gemma's mother had caught her eye. Before her footing was kicked away from her, Angela Fisher mouthed the words, "Live, live for us." Tears in Angela's eyes were the last things Gemma saw before the rope snapped, taut, and the quartet of condemned began kicking, faces twisted in horror. The painted faces looked little like her family, but the painter had captured the terror of the doomed. Gemma was grateful that the likeness of the painting was off. There was no chance anyone would connect her and her blue eyes to the brown-eyed quartet kicking above the banquet table. Justice will be served, Gemma promised herself as she did whenever she ate. Revenge had hardened her, but it was slow. Years of practicing her accent, her manners, which utensils to use, had honed her for the mission. A lord with a grudge against Algernon Blackstone had presented her to the widower as a cousin. Lecherous Lord Blackstone hadn't wasted a week before wedding himself to the teenaged Gemma. "The cook will be finished with breakfast shortly. Can I cut you some bread and spread it for you?" Reginald asked. The 80-year-old butler's perfect posture contrasted the bent back of Lord Blackstone. "Yes, please," Gemma nodded. Fresh bread, hot from the oven, steamed as the bread knife sawed through it. The wedge-shaped slice belied distraction as the butler watched the dining room door expectantly. Normally, his every cut was perfect. "Something on your mind, Reginald?" Algernon Blackstone asked, raising a graying eyebrow. "Just an anniversary of sorts, Lord Blackstone." Glowing life Gemma had never seen sparkled in Reginald's red-veined eyes. His smile unnerved her. Watching the door, she gripped a butter knife with white knuckles. "What are you up to?" The ancient doors whined on hinges that needed to be oiled as the cook entered with a covered tray. Walking down the table, Camilla set the tray down at the end. The silver dome revealed 2 matchlock pistols. Both were loaded and ready to fire. "Reginald? Camilla? What is this?" Lord Blackstone's voice was outraged. He tried to stand, shaking, but broke into a fit of coughing. The butler and cook began laughing. Camilla took both pistols, handed one to Reginald, and aimed hers at Gemma. "Do you remember the girl you had drowned for spilling soup in your lap?" asked Camilla. She waited for recognition in the Lord's eyes. "You don't, do you?" Victory morphed into outrage on the cook's face. "Was my daughter's life so forgettable to you?" "I don't," Lord Algernon began. "Soup!" Reginald yelled. "Spilled soup!" He leveled his pistol at Lord Blackstone. "You could have beaten her. You could have locked her in the stocks. You could have simply fired her. No, you killed her. Our beautiful girl drowned over fucking soup." Reginald's forever gray face was red. Veins throbbed in his forehead. "She was your daughter?" Algernon asked, looking from the butler to the cook to Lady Blackstone. "Our only daughter," Camilla nodded. "Who you killed 20 years ago today." 20 years? Gemma asked, unable to stop herself. "We waited 20 years? He killed my family 7 years ago, and I was nearly done with him." Camilla's gun aimed at her heart as she pointed at the painting above the table. "You commissioned that painting yourself," Reginald said. He waved his free hand at justice will be served, to remind me of the mother, father, sister, and brother he had hanged. Palms raised, Gemma pushed herself out of the gilded chair she'd been sitting in 3 times a day for years. "Your maiden name was Sinclair," Camilla snarled. "I was here when Lord William Sinclair delivered you to Lord Blackstone." With every word, Gemma saw the old woman working herself up to shooting Gemma. To him, she was as guilty as Lord Blackstone. He hated Algernon. I told Lord Sinclair my marriage to Lord Blackstone would be his downfall. William was only too happy to help. "I'll have you all hanged," said Lord Blackstone. He slammed a gnarled fist into the table and winced. Convulsing, he clutched at his chest. "You'll never hurt anyone again," Gemma told him. "I've been seeing to that for months." She turned to Reginald. "I've been poisoning his morning whiskey." "What?" said Lord Blackstone, the butler and the cook as one. "It's no coincidence he can barely move," said Gemma, looking from Reginald to Camilla. "It's the poison." "You told me you believed in justice," wheezed Algernon Blackstone. "I do," said Gemma, her face releasing all of the anger she'd held in for years. "Justice for my mother Angela, for my father David, for my sister Alice, for my brother Darren, all murdered so that you could make a point." She prodded his chest. His hand moved to catch her finger at a snail's pace. "There's poison in my Janelle No. 5 perfume. I've been adding a drop to your whiskey since I bought the rat killer from a farmer at last year's summer fair." He stole from me. I had to set an example, said Lord Blackstone of her father. Do you know how many one-handed thieves there were walking about in the town, making a mockery of justice, of the law? He looked at the painting, unrepentant. He gathered his resolve. Then you should have whipped him, locked him in the stocks, banished him. Gemma's voice was colder than the iron bars on Blackstone Castle's windows in midwinter. I have a responsibility to uphold the law of the land. A liar like you could never understand. Lords maintain order, otherwise there would be chaos. He caught his wife's eye, imploring. It was nothing personal, Gemma. I didn't know you. That's the problem, Algernon. It's never personal. Life means nothing to you. Their daughter meant nothing to you. Lady Blackstone waved a hand at the butler and the cook. It's personal for us and everyone who's had their life destroyed by your twisted vision of justice. You're serious, aren't you? Reginald asked. Camilla, take the gun. I have to know. He handed his pistol to the woman who had prepared every meal Algernon had eaten for 20 years. His coattails flicked as he flitted through the dining hall door. His footsteps retreated, clattering along the flagstones. Gemma, said Lord Blackstone. Desperation was writ large in his bulging eyes. You've been my wife for 5 wonderful years. I've loved you with all my heart. I've had the hard task of keeping the peace in these parts, but I've never meant you harm. Gemma, I love you. Please don't do this. He pressed his palms together. In the name of God, spare me. God? Gemma scoffed. Love? She slapped the table, giving Algernon and Camilla a fright. You would have hung me with the rest of my family if I hadn't been checking the family crab traps. I returned to find my entire family on the gallows on your order. I watched them hang because you had decreed it. Tears of anger ran through her powder makeup. God may have said, "Thou shalt not steal," but I'm sure he gave precedence to "Thou shalt not kill." You have a lot of blood on your hands, Lord Blackstone. At his title, Gemma turned on the stately accent which had been slipping as she told her story. Don't think I trust you, said the cook to Lady Blackstone. I've watched you playing the doting wife for years. I've seen you fawning over this monster. I've heard you praise his firm hand for the law. The gray hair of the old woman was slick with sweat that beaded on her forehead. That's all it was, Camilla. An act. You must have known my mother Angela, and me. My name is Jenny Fisher. I lived in Blackstone until the day he hung my family. I ran to Winshore to escape. I learned to copy Lord Sinclair, working in his kitchen. I learned the way the gardener poisoned foxes and rats. I formed a plan. I convinced Lord Sinclair to pass me off as his own to spite Lord Blackstone. Jenny Fisher took a deep breath before her next admission. Then I killed Lord Sinclair. What? Algernon turned to look at her. A murderess in my bed all these years. I was in good company as far as that goes, Jenny said coldly, the lesser of two evils. Lord Sinclair was no saint himself. She chewed her nail as the sound of Reginald's perfectly shined shoes returned. I don't know what's in this bottle, said the butter, holding up the exquisite green glass. But it's not perfume. It's certainly not Janelle number 5. None of it touched you, did it? Jenny asked. A drop is dangerous. 3 is death. She's telling the truth? Camilla asked. The gun aimed at Lady Blackstone lowered from Jenny's heart to her stomach. This is too much. Lord Blackstone has no shortage of enemies. That's no secret. Reginald took a gun from his wife and sat heavily 5 seats down from the lord and lady of the castle. How can we know for sure she's telling the truth? Camilla asked. We've waited all these years. I'm not letting revenge slip away after all that time. I want to see the light leave his eyes. I want to watch his soul leave this husk on the way to hell. Camilla, please. Algernon's lip quivered. You shut your murderous mouth, Lord Blackstone. I want nothing but death from you. Camilla stretched her arm from point blank until the barrel was one chair from the wretch who brought them all together. Let me do what I was planning to do. Jenny tilted her head as her mother had when she'd haggled with Sellers. He drinks from that bottle as much as he likes. We can all watch justice be done. That way you'll know. Gemma! Algernon Blackstone tried to stand and coughed up mucus and blood for his futile efforts. My name is Jenny. Jenny Fisher. Always was. Always will be. Daughter of Angela and David. Sister to Alice and Darren. I want you to know that as you die. Her dress, green silk and cotton, fluffed her out to twice the size as she stood by his side. We have glasses. Let me serve him. Number, I'm not drinking anything you give me, Lord Blackstone said with steel in his voice. Then let them shoot you. I'm sure that hurts more, said Jenny with a cruel smile. Whether you die isn't up for debate, husband. Your choice now is how you want to go. Reaching across the long table, she took an empty glass and opened her hand, waiting for the green bottle in Reginald's grip. When he handed her the former perfume container, she poured a shot of it into the waiting glass and handed it to Lord Blackstone. Silence took a seat beside them at the table and waited patiently. Harsh winds from across the sea could scarcely be heard over the sound of the host's labored breathing. Algernon Blackstone stared at the clear liquid in the glass, pure as water. His hand trembled. I can't smell it, said the Lord of Blackstone Castle. That was the point, husband. The woman he'd known as Gemma for years watched him expectantly. This or a gun wound? He asked, raising the glass of death. You could jump from the battlements onto the rocks if you like, said Camilla. I've dreamed of pushing you off them for years. Justice will be served, said Lord Algernon. His shoulders sank. Is it too late to say that I'm sorry? He looked from one executioner to another. No, said Reginald. But it's far too late for an apology to get you out of this. Algernon coughed. Closing his eyes, he nodded. Well, I'm sorry anyway. I tried to see the world in black and white. It was easier that way. He swirled his doom in the glass. It tasted fine in whiskey. If I'm to go, can it be in bed? One last sleep? What do you think? Reginald asked Camilla. As long as it's done. The cook nodded. Back to bed then, Lord Blackstone. The butler took the glass from Algernon's shaking hands, gave it to his wife, then wheeled his master away. Jenny walked behind Reginald with Camilla's gun aimed at her back. The butler helped the lord into his four-poster bed. Jenny filled the rest of the glass with amber alcohol and handed it to her husband. Looks delicious, said Lord Blackstone. He gave them all a vicious smile. I forgive you for murdering me. Hopefully you can all find peace together, knowing what you did, what you are. Laughing through a cough, he drank down his whiskey. Trying to divide us with your last words? Jenny sat by Lord Algernon's side. How you? Just remember my family as you die. She took his hand, already immobile. And our daughter, said Camilla. He can't talk, said Jenny. He's not breathing. This is the end. She looked into Algernon's bulging eyes. Justice is served. Lord Blackstone's chest stopped moving. He twitched weakly, then ceased. Is he dead? Reginald asked. Number not yet, but it is inevitable now. Jenny closed the liver-spotted eyelids of her husband. His skin was cold. Her fingers on his neck felt the beat of his heart slowing to a stop. It's done. I thought I would feel something. Camilla looked at Reginald. I thought I would feel some peace at last. What now? Reginald asked. Breakfast? Lady Blackstone suggested. The day had not gone as planned. She had 2 loose ends to tie off and always planned better on a full stomach. A Christmas Day heist. A grande whole milk latte and all the money in the cash register, Bernie said to the cashier, while pointing the gun at the barista. Or the barista dies. People usually value other people's lives more than their own, or at least they should. The age 20s, something cashier's face was twitching. It was clear he had never been in a robbery before. Calgary is a safe city, or at least it was before the people from Toronto started showing up. Is this for real? Are you actually robbing the store? The cashier said. Does this gun look real to you? Bernie allowed the cashier to have a good look at the cold, hard steel of the Glock G19. The cashier raised his hands. It felt good to watch other people do as they were told for a change. Behind Bernie, a woman's voice said, "That's not a good decision." "And why not?" Bernie sneered. "Full fat milk. You should choose skim or soy." Bernie glanced around and saw a young woman with lightly bleached hair, that new style that gives women a zombie-like appearance. She was wearing a t-shirt with a cartoon figure on it. Definitely from Toronto, the weird ones are. Or Vancouver. "I didn't ask your opinion." The cashier behind the register said, "The grande full-fat latte comes to $7.99. Bernie pulled out a credit card, an action born out of habit, then put it back away. The robbery was not going the right way at all. "You are going to give me at least $500, Bernie demanded to the cashier. The girl with the bleached hair began talking over her shoulder again. "I'd like a half skinny flat white with a shot of hazelnut using my Starbucks bonus points." Firing a bullet into the ceiling would have made this robbery easier. Calgary police interview of suspect Bernie Schultz by Officer Ringenberg. Or, in your own words, explain to me what happened earlier today. BS. I usually drink coffee at Tim Hortons, so I thought it would be better to rob a Starbucks. Calgary is a big city, but this is Canada. People know each other. At Tim Hortons, no one ever gives feedback on what drink I'm ordering. Who let all the Starbucks open in Calgary anyway? It must have been those arseholes from Toronto. The same Torontonian arseholes who voted for Trudeau. How did I get here? One day, I was the site administrator of the biggest oil project in Alberta. The next day, global warming and electric vehicles means I've lost my job. Then I was dragged from my home by government thugs. They wore different uniforms than you, but were in uniform from my home. My brother, who helped me pack my things, said I needed to get used to change. "This is 2023, he said. One door closes and another door opens, he says. My brother has a big mouth. At my new place in the sticks close to the forest, the fires worry me. I watch the news on CBC every night and have chats with my neighbor Ted about the fires. They didn't happen before. Not before Trudeau took over. Anyways, Ted says we need to fight the system. He said if we could get $500 together, we can drive to the Yukon and live in an abandoned cabin over the summer and get away from the lunatics in Calgary. Or, what's Ted's last name? B.S. Bennett. 2 N's and 2 T's. So back to the story. Since Trudeau took over, everything is about pointing out other people's mistakes. People are always telling me what words I'm not supposed to say anymore. Well, thank God some things stay the same. Once a week, me and Ted walked to the Tim Hortons nearby. Even Timmy's didn't have a Christmas tree this year. But that's not going to stop Bernie from having the spirit of Christmas. At that other place, people just wouldn't listen to a woman with a gun. I wanted to shoot a bullet into the ceiling to stop them all yammering. And then you all came in. O.R. Thank you, Bernie. That's all we need today. We're still collecting evidence. Before I start shooting, there's something I'd like to say, Bernie announced. I hope you have a Merry Christmas. She turned from the cashier to the barista. And you too. Merry Christmas. Ma'am, here's your latte, and have a Merry Christmas, the cashier said. Then he added, I don't usually say that, and looked at the other people listening in the store. They had stopped talking to each other and were paying attention closely, in the way every high school teacher dreams of. Bernie gave everyone present a stern look, one that showed she meant business. Her arm was getting tired. She forgot how heavy guns were. The cashier had been holding his hands up for quite a while and was getting tired too. Sorry, ma'am. I can't give you all the money in the cash register, he said slowly and calmly, because this is a cashless store. His eyeballs moved back and forth between Bernie and the sign next to the cash register. It said, This is a cashless store. Bernie groaned. It's because of those people from Toronto again. I'm from Calgary, the cashier explained. Bernie didn't know how to respond to that. Doesn't your son come in here? The cashier asked. Bernie realized at that moment she should have worn a disguise. Outside, flashing red lights appeared. Bernie watched with concern as police cars filled the parking lot. The cashier, in a kind voice, the tone a person might use to give a suggestion to a friend that the color of his sweater doesn't match his pants, said, They might shoot you if you're holding that gun. It doesn't matter what age you are. As Bernie thought about putting the gun down, one of the police looked into the window and then walked straight in. Bernie has thought they might surround the building and start a kidnapping negotiation. She had planned to ask for a taxi to the Yukon to let everyone go. Bernie Schultz? The policeman asked. Who's asking? Let's take you back to Sage Hill, he said, and walked straight toward her. Bernie lowered the gun that lacked bullets. Her gig was up. The police knew retirees in Calgary wouldn't give up their guns, but the retirement homes had taken away their bullets. The cashier cleared his throat. Just from my Instagram account. Why were you trying to rob the store? Bernie wanted to quote Willie Sutton, because that's where all the money is. But it didn't seem to fit this situation anymore. She mulled it over. The police weren't in a rush. She told the cashier, For once, I just wanted to be in control of my own life. The cashier thought about it, then said, The office workers that come into our store and put in complicated orders, I think have the same reason. When he noticed how many people were watching him, he added, Not that that stereotype is representative of all people who work in offices. In the language of her own generation, Bernie explained that she also didn't mean any offense to anyone by her words and actions that day. Sorry, she said. She left the store with the police, one holding her shoulder in case she tripped on the front step, not Mary. The unnerving chorus of cutlery scraping porcelain echoed throughout the room. Tension hung thick in the air, palpable enough to reach up and slice into it with my steak knife. Beside me, my sister sniffed. From my periphery, I could see her red-rimmed eyes staring blankly at her untouched plate. I cut into the slab before me, crimson juices forming a greasy puddle. I took a bite, relished the tenderness. The peas encroached into the sea of mashed potatoes like invading soldiers. "Would you please pass the potatoes, Mary?" Mother asked from the other end of the table. I nodded, heaving the dish over to my sister to pass on. Her gaze remained fixed on her plate as she sat on both hands, legs trembling. A small, choked sob escaped from her lips. "That's quite enough, Leah," Father growled, stabbing into his own steak. Leah shakily grasped the bowl, ushering it to Mother. Between them sat Jonah, barely peeking over the edge of the table and pushing his food about. At the tender age of 5, he was blissfully ignorant. I chewed a bit of gristle in the next bite, watching Father's brow furrow as he took a sip of wine, a rogue tendril staining his snowy beard burgundy. He cleared his throat, an action which rendered the table still, waiting with bated breath. Children, the ultimate test is almost upon us. I hated the way he spoke, like that of an old novel. Mother rested a bony hand over his and listened intently. With her other hand, she fingered the gold cross hanging from her neck. "We will not let the enemy destroy our union. We will not succumb to their devilish tendencies, for they are blind to the ways in which we serve him. They will never know such unwavering love and loyalty, and for that, I pity them." Mother nodded in understanding, her silvery bun bobbing. Father tossed his napkin over his plate and stood, chair screeching dully on concrete. We watched as he climbed the nearby staircase. Stray spots of maroon that had earlier leached into the wood marked his steps, evidence of what he'd done to protect the sanctity of his family. There was once a time when I would have chased after him, lunging for the open door, yearning for sunlight, but the scar on the back of my head itched like an ugly deterrent. I made it a point to constantly remind myself of who I was, where I came from. Fragments of memories, the way my mother used to rub my back in the morning when she woke me for school, the sound of my father's work shoes on the hardwood floors every evening, the hum of the fish tank in my childhood bedroom remained filed away in the depths of my mind, growing fuzzier with each passing day. But I dared not speak of these memories. They were mine and only mine. Leah, now gangly and naive in the throes of adolescence, was more pliable. I imagined she couldn't even recall things like the details of her mother's face or the way it felt to ride a school bus. When Mother and Father told her something, she accepted it at face value. And Jonah, in all his cherubic innocence, had never known another life. The harsh fluorescents were his sun and moon, every day the same. Sometimes it made me want to weep, but then I reminded myself he knew no different. Perhaps it was better that way. Father's thunderous descent broke my thoughts. Mother stood at his approach, collecting some of the equipment he came bearing. As he laid a piece before each of us, the breath caught in my throat. My eyes followed the transition from dark metal into laminated wood that led down to an unmistakable component, a trigger. Out of the children, only I knew how to operate a gun. When I was 8 years old, my father took me hunting for the first time. I recalled the way the cold seeped into my fingers and toes as we waited for hours. We flinched at any flicker of movement, which often turned out to be a rummaging squirrel. But then he arrived. Statuesque and bristled, his sinewy figure strutted into the open field, unaware of his armed audience. His antlers were a thorny crown that dipped with him as he scoured the earth. "Take the shot," my father egged, helping me hold the heavy rifle. We'd gone over the process an umpteen amount of times, but now the steely grip felt wrong. I dropped my shoulder, finger slipping from the trigger as the barrel slung towards the ceiling of the tree stand, and my father cursed. That was the first time my father swore in front of me. In one swift motion, he grabbed the gun, took aim, and fired. I covered my ears and watched in silent horror as the creature's body quivered with the impact. His legs buckled, and he scrambled for a brief moment before taking off, blood spilling from his flank. My father took my shoulders in his hands and kneeled square before me. "You don't ever let the gun drop like that, especially with the safety off," he scolded. Hot tears coursed down my cheeks, stinging the wind-chapped skin. My father profusely apologized for swearing and raising his voice, wrapping me in a hug. But I wasn't crying because he yelled. I kept replaying the look of sheer panic as the bullet ripped through the deer's flesh, the terror and confusion he must have felt. We trailed our victim for a short while, following the blood-stained leaves of early winter. He didn't make it far, having collapsed in a small clearing. Panting laboriously, his onyx eyes stared up in blank defeat, and I saw myself in their reflection. Before I could process the scene, another shot rang out, and the deer stilled. "A kill shot," my father explained, "to end his suffering. When you see the enemy, you take the shot," Father said then, breaking my trance. I was back in my chair, staring down at the weapon before me. Leah ran a trembling finger over the safety, ensuring it was on per Father's crash course. Jonah, too small to wield such a device, was given a knife instead. Never before had we been permitted to use any kind of weaponry. Anything more than a butter knife was forbidden. Father and Mother claimed it was for our own safety, but I knew better. And that didn't stop me from fantasizing a ballpoint pen embedded in a windpipe, a broken bedpost as a club to the head. I'd had my fair share of time to ponder the possibilities. Leah and Jonah may have been taken at malleable ages, but I refused to fully yield. The slight quiver in Father's hands and the way Mother's complexion paled meant it was all hands on deck. Though I didn't know whose blood painted the staircase, sticky on the soles of Father's shoes, it had led us to such a cataclysm that I dared to dream about life beyond the concrete. I yearned to return to a world where my name was my own, not the one I'd been forced to adopt. I longed to hug my mother and father, to bask in the sunlight on a summer day, to see my friends, to witness the light at the end of a nearly decade-long tunnel. Could this be the end? The gunmetal was cool in my clammy palms. I contemplated aiming it at Father or at Mother. It would be so easy. But what if it wasn't loaded? What if it was just for show? And could I really do it? "Let us go," Father commanded, leading our ragtag troop up the stairs. At the top, Father unlatched the door, leading us into an empty hall with another door at its opposing end. Bringing up the rear, I glanced back into the abyss where time passed indefinitely. And as the next door opened into a moonlit room, I realized I would never allow myself to return. Gilded crosses glinted from every wall as we wound through the house. And like something from a movie, a muffled voice seeped in through the cracks in the windows and doors. "Come out with your hands up." "Father?" Leah croaked. "Who is that?" Father ignored her, the click of his safety flipping off. He slung the gun around his back, nodding at Mother as he approached the door. The rush of blood thrummed in my ears. Leah mimicked Father and switched her safety off, and Mother did the same. Greasy coils of nausea knotted my gut as I followed their lead. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. Nothing about the unfolding situation felt good or right or godly. Father gripped the doorknob with a fierceness and turned. Golden porch light flooded the entryway. For a moment, Father's face looked younger in the warm glow, and I wondered what led him to this path in life. Slowly, he raised his hands above his head and stepped outside. "Drop your weapon!" an extraneous voice shouted. "It's over, Arthur," another called. "Do the right thing and drop your weapon." "I'm afraid I can't do that," Father replied simply, as if he were declining an invitation to a party. "Your godlessness is a stain on this earth, and I have to protect my family from such evil. I can't let you destroy the Lord's work. You think you can interfere with his plan?" Disconcerted grumbles echoed as a reply. "Dear?" Father called. Mother, gun cradled in her arms, crept to his side. Her skin was sallow, brow damp with prickles of sweat. The woman, always so composed, seemed to be cracking. "Mrs. Goodfellow, drop your weapon now," the second voice commanded. Tensions heightened with each passing second. "Put down your weapon and put your hands up." Negotiations persisted, but I knew Mother was as stubborn as a mule and loyal as a dog. She would follow Father to the ends of the earth. The crunch of boots on gravel drew near. Father stiffened. "Not another step," he threatened, raising his gun. "Don't turn this into a standoff, Arthur," the voice urged. "That's not going to do either of us any good." A treacherous moment of silence ticked by. Every part of me trembled. "I will not let you tear this family apart," Father declared coldly. "Maud," he said, nodding at Mother, who lifted her gun. Her finger made contact with the trigger, and she pulled. A deafening blast ripped through the cool night air, and all hell broke loose. Shouts of anger and bewilderment erupted, and I watched as Mother's body lurched back in a swarm of bullets. In collapsing, her gun fired. I fell to the floor, covering the important parts of myself. Father crawled lamely over the threshold, dragging Mother's body with him. With a weak kick, he shut and locked the door. Blood from their matching wounds seeped into the floor, a crimson trail smeared behind them. Amidst the chaos, Father tenderly brushed stray hairs from Mother's face. He caressed her cheek in his calloused hand as she gasped for air, her blouse soaked through and the cross dangling from her neck now stained. Faint whispers of prayer spilled from his lips as he continued to comfort Mother. Barked orders swirled beyond the window panes, the thud of boots heavy on the porch. From the floor, I glanced around. Jonah was nowhere to be found. "Jonah?" I called quietly. "Leah, Jonah's not." I turned. Leah lay face down nearby, arms splayed by her sides and gun resting under the nearby sofa. "Leah?" On shaking limbs, I clawed my way over to her. Terror gripped my throat so viciously I struggled to breathe. Thick locks of brunette cascaded into the floor, shielding her face from view. I carefully grabbed her shoulder, rolling her over. A strangled cry escaped me as I recoiled at the sight. Blood trickled from her forehead down the bridge of her nose between lifeless eyes. The bile that earlier threatened to purge itself did so then. I wiped my mouth, one last dry heave racking my body, before curling up beside Leah. Garbled whispers across the room caught my attention, and I looked to see Father lying beside Mother, gazing up at the ceiling of the foyer. Though worse for wear, he still managed to recite the Lord's Prayer unfalteringly. Mother remained limp, devoid of life. "Mary?" Father called blindly, like a sick game of Marco Polo. "Mary, child, are you still there?" I rose, stepping gingerly until I stood over top of him. His snowy beard, once stained with wine, was now marred with fatal streaks of maroon. "She's dead," I said solemnly. "Leah's dead." I didn't want to reveal that Mother's gun misfiring was the cause. I wanted him to think it was his fault, which, truthfully, it was. Everything was his fault. Sometimes, We as servants of the Lord must make the ultimate sacrifice. Shut up, I hissed, jabbing the barrel of my gun into his forehead. Father grew silent for a moment. Mary, you are a daughter of the one true King, he rasped. You are our last hope at ending the war of evil that has been waged against us. When you see the enemy, take the shot. I sniffed. You're right, Father. His breathing was ragged, blood curdling in his lungs as we spoke. A twinge of sorrow panged my heart as I gazed down at the dying man before me. But then I remembered all the hurt he'd inflicted, all the years he'd stolen, and anger sizzled in my veins. Realization flashed across his face. Mary. A single blast rang out, a kill shot to end his suffering. The footsteps and chatter outside ceased. For a moment, the world was silent. My name's not Mary, I spat, dropping the gun. With a quick yank, I tore the gold cross from my neck, dropping it onto Father's still chest. A muffled cry emanated from somewhere close by. My heart clenched. Jonah, I called, wheeling around in search of the noise. I padded across the living room to the pantry where the cries seemed to stem from. Carefully, I turned the knob and opened the door. Head buried between his knees, Jonah sat curled in a ball. Jonah. I rubbed his back, and he glanced up. His eyes shone with tears. Jonah, it's okay. I'm here. Just as the front door splintered open under the crack of a boot, I wrapped him in a hug. Fall family feud. Local missing children discovered in police raid after officer slain. Abducted children found in home of local religious leaders. My name's not Mary. Young woman's fight for survival in House of Horrors.